Chapter 1700. They were surrounded by dark green forests and mountain ranges. Only the Grand Canyon was filled with colorful and dazzling scenes. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood. That canyon should be the 100-Flower Valley we're looking for. Originally, they were already close to the 100-Flower Valley, but because they had fought too many battles and exhausted their strength, they decided to rest on the mountain peak. Who would have thought that after being attacked by the 2 flood dragons, they would stumble into the 100-Flower Valley? Ji Tianqing sneered and murmured to himself, I didn't expect that the 2 dragons that attacked us were demon beasts of the 100-Flower Valley. It seems that the rumors are true. Not only does the 100-Flower Valley have pleasant scenery, it also has fatal dangers and dangers. Yun Yao followed beside him and looked down at the 100-Flower Valley. After observing for a while, she reminded, Tianqing, look at the fog above the canyon. It's probably not ordinary fog. Ji Tianqing nodded. Yes, it should be poisonous fog. There are all kinds of strange flowers and plants in the 100-Flower Valley, most of which are poisonous. Although we have special constitutions and are immune to poison, we still have to be careful. While talking, he flew towards the 100-Flower Valley with Yun Yao. In just 10 breaths, the 2 landed in the deep 100-Flower Valley. The canyon was 50 kilometers wide and ran north-south. It was unknown how many kilometers long it was. There were majestic mountain ranges on both sides of the valley. Dark green vines and moss crawled on the steep cliffs. The soil on the ground was fertile and moist. It was dark red and gave off a strong smell of rot. Strange flowers of different colors were blooming in the surrounding flowers. Some of them even bore fruit. Clumps of dark red lotus flowers formed a red carpet with a radius of 3,000 meters. Bright red blood mandara flowers were clustered together, quietly blooming and emitting traces of the stench of blood. Budding white jade peony, light purple hyacinths, light yellow evening primroses, pink albizar were scattered on the ground. There were also many forsythia, purple tea and rarely seen flowers and plants. It was also a scene of colorful flowers. Ji Tianqing flew into the depths of Flower Valley. While observing the flowers and plants along the way, he discovered that more than 80% of the flowers and plants were spiritual medicines with extraordinary effects. But for some reason, all the flowers and plants in the Flower Valley were different from the spiritual herbs he knew. They seemed to have mutated and contained a strong poison. He told Yun Yao about his discovery and said via voice transmission, the flowers and plants in this place look like spirit herbs on the surface, but in fact, all of them are highly toxic. If an ignorant martial artist were to come here and suddenly discover so many precious spirit herbs, they would definitely pick them and then die from poisoning. Yun Yao nodded slightly in agreement and said with a serious expression, look at those flowers and plants. They are abnormally strong and tall. They have been growing for at least a few hundred years. If they didn't contain any toxicity, those spirit herbs were all top-notch medicinal herbs. No wonder Luo Li said that there might be some kind of divine item hidden in the 100-Flower Valley. Only the power of a divine item can allow those ordinary flowers and plants to evolve into spirit herbs and grow for hundreds or thousands of years without withering. After pausing for a moment, she added, the air is also filled with invisible poison that can erode and paralyze a martial artist's consciousness and soul. Although we can resist the corrosion of the poison, we can't stay here for too long. Otherwise, our consciousness and soul will also be damaged, leaving behind wounds that are difficult to heal. Also, I can vaguely feel that there is some kind of divine power in the depths of the valley, as if it is silently calling out to me. Ji Tianqing knew that Yun Yao had fused with 2 divine pearls. As long as she was within the range of the divine pearls, she could sense and connect with them. It seems that Luo Li's deduction is correct. There might be a divine pearl hidden in the depths of 100-Flower Valley? Yun Yao nodded, and a look of anticipation appeared in her eyes. It should be so, but I don't understand. If there really is a divine pearl here, why would it be hidden here? Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, there's no need to dwell on the reason. As long as we can find the divine pearl, we will be extremely lucky. Perhaps the divine pearl was left here. Or perhaps it was originally somewhere else and was brought here for some reason. After all, Divine monarch Naker Light has been dead for 30,000 years. In such a long time, the entire world has undergone tremendous changes. The world changes with each passing day. Therefore, it's not strange for the divine pearl to be scattered anywhere in the world. As they spoke, the two flew over the thousands of flowers and headed deep into Flower Valley. The deeper they went into Flower Valley, the more lush the flowers and plants on the ground became. Many of the flowers and plants had clearly mutated. Flowers and plants that were originally a foot tall could grow to 3 to 4 meters tall, like large trees. Many palm-sized flowers could grow to the size of a wash basin, or even a millstone. Everything was mysterious and strange. What the two could confirm was that there was indeed a divine item, hidden in the depths of Flower Valley. It was very likely the divine pearl that Yunyao needed. Ji Tianxing guessed that it was the power of the divine pearl that allowed the flowers and plants in this valley to bloom. Furthermore, the flowers and plants had evolved and mutated, growing for thousands of years. As for why the flowers had mutated from spiritual herbs to poisonous herbs, there was no way to know. Soon, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao traversed more than 50 kilometers in Flower Valley and arrived at its depths. There was a thick fog above their heads. It combined with the power of heaven and earth to form a powerful array formation that sealed the entire Flower Valley. The poison in the air was even more intense, causing their consciousness to fade and making it difficult for them to concentrate. The various flowers and plants on the ground had also become stronger. They had evolved and mutated so much that it was difficult to recognize them. The surroundings were quiet. It was as silent as death. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao held their swords and slowed down as they vigilantly observed their surroundings. Suddenly, rustling sounds came from the dense flowers in front of them. A sharp gust of wind blew. The two immediately stopped flying and looked ahead with sharp gazes. Soon, a dense crowd of figures emerged from the lush flowers and flew into the sky. Ji Tianxing immediately saw them clearly. They were more than 20 strange-looking demon beasts. Some of the demon beasts were humanoid. They had 4 limbs and a head, but their true forms were furry beasts. There were also some demon beasts that looked like ferocious beasts. Their bodies were filled with a strong murderous aura, but their true forms were tree demons. The hair on their bodies was made of leaves and branches. There were also some demon beasts that were originally common birds and beasts that had evolved and mutated into ferocious and terrifying demon beasts. A total of 26 demon beasts stood in the sky and blocked Ji Tianxing and Yunyao's path. Chapter 1701. Ji Tianxing and Yunyao gripped their swords tightly as they stared coldly at the Fey beasts. The duo could tell that the Fey beasts were at least at the 8th firmament essence soul realm. The strongest Fey beasts had already reached the peak 9th firmament essence soul realm and were about to face a heavenly tribulation. Without a doubt, this pack of ferocious Fey beasts possessed terrifying combat strength. The duo had to be careful, or they might return in defeat. As Ji Tianxing observed the pack of Fey beasts, he sent a voice transmission to Yunyao. Yao Yao, there's only one path to enter the depths of Centauria Valley. We have to charge our way in. When the battle begins, just hold the fort for me. Do not charge in. I suspect that there are far more Fey beasts entrenched in Centauria Valley. Yunyao nodded and asked with a voice transmission. By the way, Tianxing, where's the little black dragon? How strong is it? Can it come out to help? Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a heavy expression, I obtained a divine dragon crystal in the ruins of gods and gave it to the little black dragon. It is currently refining the divine dragon crystal and has been in a deep slumber. It has yet to awaken. We can only rely on ourselves for this battle. Yunyao nodded slightly as her eyes turned solemn. More than 20 Fey beasts stood in front of them, glaring at the duo. Their bodies emitted intense killing intent. However, they were highly intelligent. It was as though they were carrying out orders and were not in a hurry to attack. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly he thought of something. Could it be that this pack of Fey beasts are just shrimp soldiers and crab generals? Do they have a stronger leader? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a strong gust of wind came from deep within Centauria Valley. A rich floral fragrance wafted over. In a few short seconds, A gigantic figure flew out of the fog and arrived in the middle of the pack of fey beasts. Ji Tianqing focused his gaze, and the first thing he saw was the azure Wyrm that was covered in wounds. Its huge and sturdy body was originally covered with crisscrossing wounds and bloody holes, and its entire body was covered in blood. But now, the bloodstains all over its body had disappeared, and its wounds were gradually healing. Blood was no longer flowing out. It floated in midair, its flat head poking down and staring at Ji Tianqing. Its dark green eyes were filled with cold resentment. However, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao glanced at it, and their gazes fell on its back. On its broad back stood a huge figure that was 10 feet tall. It was a dark purple Yao Lord. It had the body of a human, but it had 4 muscular arms. Its body was very majestic. It was draped in a huge and tattered robe, and there were many rags hanging all over its body. Its head was like a strange purple flower, without a face or facial features. Without a doubt, it was a flower demon. On its left shoulder sat a petite banshee that looked like a human. The banshee was 2 meters tall, and her appearance was very similar to a human. She had a slim and healthy figure, and a charming and beautiful face. She wore a light pink dress, and had long dark green hair. She was barefooted and swayed her legs leisurely. After careful observation, Ji Tianqing discovered that this human-like woman was actually a flower demon. Moreover, there was a flower vine connecting her to the ugly flower demon. Her life force and dermic power aura were also connected. Both of their strengths had reached the 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He muttered softly, "As the ancient saying goes, flowers bloom on the same stem, and branches are intertwined." Could it be that these 2 flower demons evolved from a single flower on a stem? Yin Yao nodded slightly and replied in a low voice, "I think so. The flower on a stem is rare, and it's even rarer for both of them to evolve into flower demons. These 2 flower demons are very strong, and they must have powerful magical techniques. We have to be careful." As soon as she finished speaking, the charming flower demoness covered her mouth with her hand and giggled. I didn't expect that the 2 insects that came to die in the Flower Valley were a pair of beautiful people. For thousands of years, countless insects of the human race have entered the Flower Valley and become fertilizer for the flowers. It's the first time I've seen such a talented couple with outstanding talents like you. I'm really looking forward to grinding your bones and scattering your ashes. I'll mix it with your blood and sprinkle it in the Flower Valley. I wonder if it'll have a miraculous effect. The flower demon's voice was very sharp, and she was speaking the human language of the divine item continent. Ji Tianqing looked at her coldly and said with a murderous aura, "Even if you have the appearance of a human and mastered the human language, you're still just a cruel flower demon. You're full of evil. Since you've met us today, you'll die." Hearing his words, the flower demon suddenly raised her head and laughed. "Ha ha ha ha. It's so funny. The number of insects of the human race that died under my claws is at least 800, if not 1,000. At least half of them would boast shamelessly like you before making a move, bluffing and bluffing. But in the end, when they were about to die under my claws, they would be terrified and desperate to the extreme. They would kneel and beg for mercy in all kinds of ugly ways. The human race is so sad." The ugly flower demon that carried her on its shoulder couldn't help but say something. It spoke with a middle-aged man's voice and said coldly, "Ming Lan, why are you talking nonsense with these 2 insects?" After saying that, it waved one of its thick and solid arms and ordered the 20 over-demonic beasts, "Kill those 2 worms for this monarch and tear them into pieces." The more than 20 demon beasts received the order and let out sharp roars. They rushed toward Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao as fast as lightning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The demon beasts released colorful lights, which condensed into light blades that covered the sky. They covered Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. They divided the work and cooperated with each other very well. A few demon beasts stood in the outer circle and kept releasing demon beasts, poisonous fog, and venom. They attacked Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao fiercely. The demon beasts, who were good at close combat, rushed forward bravely and waved their sharp claws to attack. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were immediately surrounded. They were in danger. The ferocious cyan dragon carried the two twin flower demons on its back and stood in midair, admiring the fierce battle. Ji Tianxing was fearless. He waved the Burial of Heaven sword with all his strength and used his secret sword technique to resist the attacks of the demon beasts. Yun Yao also waved her sword and used her technique with a serious face. Her figure was like a graceful swan, flashing continuously in the air. Light blades and sword lights covered the sky and earth. All kinds of colorful magical lights collided fiercely. Boom, boom, boom. Loud noises kept echoing in the Flower Valley and didn't disappear for a long time. Chapter 1702. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao fought with more than 20 demon beasts for 100 seconds. Within a radius of dozens of miles, everything had turned into a desolate ruin. The flowers on the ground had been smashed into pieces by the aftermath of the battle. The fertile black and red ground was full of deep pits and gullies. Many demon beasts' bodies were scattered around. In the battle just now, 6 demon beasts had been killed. Their bodies had been smashed into pieces and mixed with blood on the ground. The cliffs on both sides of the valley had also been smashed into pieces and were full of cracks. Fortunately, the mountains on both sides were protected by a mysterious force. Otherwise, the two mountains would have collapsed and turned into ruins. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianxing suddenly shouted. He waved his hands and performed a mysterious spell, releasing a terrifying secret technique. Endless flames quickly gathered in the sky above the Flower Valley and turned into an overwhelming fireball, pouring down like a rainstorm. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the area within a few dozen miles was turned into a sea of fire. The extremely violent Tiangang Crimson Fire drowned more than 20 demon beasts. Even the evil green dragon hurriedly retreated a few dozen miles and escaped from the sea of fire. The 22 primordial soul realm demonic beasts struggled in the sea of fire as they let out shrill and painful cries. Almost all of the demon beasts were burned by the Tiangang Crimson Fire. Their bodies were charred black and smoke billowed out. The 5 weaker demonic beasts had already suffered heavy injuries. Now that they were burned by the raging fire, they were burned into charcoal on the spot and scattered in the sea of fire. Even their essence souls were severely injured. They flew out of the sea of fire and fled into the depths of the Flower Valley. Ji Tianxing had been prepared. How could he let them escape so easily? Star-breaking fist. He swung his fists repeatedly, sending out a few dazzling golden fist auras towards the few primordial spirits. With a series of muffled bangs, the nascent divinities were immediately destroyed and shattered into pieces. Yun Yao also took advantage of the situation to display her ultimate skill. She waved her sword and released a destructive power. Starfall. In the sky above the Flower Valley, 12 bright silver lights immediately appeared, like 12 dazzling stars. Every star was burning with silver sparks. They fell from the sky and hit several demonic beasts on the spot. Boom, boom, boom. A few deafening explosions erupted, causing the entire 100-flower valley to tremble violently. Several demonic beasts were killed on the spot. Their bodies turned into pieces of flesh and blood, and even their primordial spirits were blasted into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the number of demonic beasts decreased sharply, leaving only 11. Moreover, the 11 demonic beasts were still struggling in the sea of fire, and their injuries were getting worse and worse. Seeing this, the twin flower demons were enraged and let out furious roars. The flower demoness frowned and cursed with a cold expression. Damned insects, I underestimated you. The ugly flower demon roared with murderous intent. You destroyed my flower valley and killed my servant. You deserve to die. As it roared, the ugly flower demon waved its 4 arms and released green poison that covered the sky and earth, pouring it into the sea of fire. TSK, TSK, TSK. The terrifying green poison fell into the sea of fire and quickly extinguished the Big Dipper crimson fire. The ground within a 60-mile radius turned into a charred ruin, and thick smoke was still rising. The 11 wounded demonic beasts escaped from the charred ruins, as if they had been pardoned, and returned to the side of the evil green dragon. Let me kill them myself. The ugly flower demon roared, and rode the evil dragon towards Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. It raised its forearms that were 15 meters long and extended hundreds of dark green vines that were as thick as buckets. They stabbed straight at Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao like spears. Each dark green vine was as hard as a tribulation-grade Dharma treasure, and its aura was extremely fierce. No matter if it was an iron wall or a Dharma treasure shield, it could not stop the vines from stabbing. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao were surrounded by countless vines, and there was nowhere for them to escape. The two of them were about to be pierced into sieves. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing shouted calmly and held Yin Yao in his arms. Golden rock wings unite. The golden wings on his back immediately opened and covered him and Yin Yao, protecting them closely. Hundreds of dark green vines stabbed the golden wings like sharp swords, and a series of dull, loud noises were heard. Bang, 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 bang. The golden wings kept shaking and flashing with dazzling golden light, but they were not damaged at all. On the contrary, the dark green vines were knocked back and tangled together in a messy way. The ugly flower demon was startled for a moment before it hurriedly used a secret technique to release an endless amount of poisonous gas. Swish, swish, swish. Hundreds of vines spurted out dark green gas at the same time, enveloping Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. The dark green poisonous gas had an extremely powerful corrosive power and could paralyze and destroy a warrior's essence soul. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao immediately felt dizzy, and their essence souls were tingling. What a powerful poison! If we weren't protected by the Kenshin battle robes, we would have been corroded by the poison immediately, and our essence souls would have been damaged. Ji Tianqing exclaimed in a low voice, and his eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. He flew 5 kilometers away with Yin Yao and escaped from the dark green poisonous fog. He had just spread his golden wings and was about to counterattack with his sword. At this time, the flower demoness waved her slender arms, releasing an overwhelming amount of pink petals that poured down like raindrops. The tens of thousands of pink petals looked very beautiful. They were like dancing butterflies, and also like pink snowflakes falling. However, Ji Tianqing's expression changed, and fear flashed in his eyes. He could clearly sense that each of the pink petals contained a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. In the next moment, the sky full of petals fell on top of his and Yin Yao's heads, and immediately exploded. Boom! 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 An earth-shattering explosion sounded in the air, shaking the entire 100-flower valley. Every single pink petal was glowing with a blinding dark red light, exuding a power that could destroy everything in its path. The ground within a radius of 100 miles was instantly blasted into a deep crater. Endless amounts of soil flew up into the sky, turning into fine powder and drifting down. The ground within 100 miles was shaved off by dozens of feet, and the entire flower valley shook violently. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing sensed the danger in advance, and used the divine concealment step to escape dozens of miles away with Yin Yao. Moreover, he used the golden rock wings to protect himself and Yin Yao at the critical moment. The destructive shockwave blasted him and Yin Yao more than 15 miles away and smashed into the ruins. 100 feet deep pit was formed on the ground, and the two of them were buried underground by dust. After a while, the two of them struggled to fly out of the deep pit, shook off the soil on their bodies, and flew back into the sky. Chapter 1703. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao were both heavily injured. Their dermic powers were in a mess, and they were panting heavily. Fortunately, they had the Kenshin battle robes, which helped them block most of the power. If not for that, they would have been blasted into pieces by the terrifying petal shower. Such a dangerous encounter made them realize that the twin flower demons were very powerful and difficult to deal with. The two of them quickly adjusted their breathing and suppressed their internal injuries. After a while, the dust that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The loud noise that reverberated in the sky also gradually stopped. Seeing Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao standing in the sky unscathed, the female flower demon frowned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? They are only in the essence soul realm. How can they not die? The female flower demon's eyes were filled with a cold light. Her body was filled with anger and murderous intent. The ugly flower demon was silent for a while. Then it said in a low voice, "They must have powerful Dharma treasures. They must also have extraordinary skills. Such talented human cultivators are really rare. It's a pity to use them as fertilizer for the flowers." The female flower demon immediately understood what it meant. She licked her lips with bloodthirsty eyes and said with a cold smile, "That's right. If we can devour their flesh and essence souls, we will definitely reap great benefits." At this moment, the 11 surviving demon beasts saw that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were injured. They pounced on them without any regard for their own safety. They spread out and formed a battle line. They joined forces to release dermic powers that covered the sky and earth. Colorful dermic powers fell from the sky towards Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao with destructive power. The sky within a 50-kilometer radius was lit up again. The air was filled with violent power. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao hurriedly waved their swords. Their faces were cold as they used their secret techniques to counterattack. Boom! 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 Dazzling sword gleams and dermic powers clashed fiercely in the sky. There was a deafening sound, and shockwaves were created. Colorful shockwaves spread out like ripples, fiercely attacking the surroundings. The ground, which had long been in ruins, was continuously shaved off layer after layer by the shockwave, filling the air with smoke and dust. The mountain ranges on both sides of the Flower Valley were also shattered by the impact. Cracks constantly appeared, and countless pieces of soil and gravel collapsed. The battle between the two sides caused the Flower Valley to be constantly destroyed, turning it into a tragic sight. However, the battle between Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the 11 demon beasts only lasted for 100 breaths. Those demon beasts were already severely injured, and only had strength at the 8th or 9th tier of the Essence Soul realm. How could they withstand the attacks of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao? The husband and wife joined forces to unleash a secret technique, and actually killed the 11 demonic beasts one by one. All of them were chopped into pieces. Even the primordial spirits of those demonic beasts could not escape the fate of being destroyed. After 100 breaths, the battle stopped. Pieces of flesh and blood were scattered all over the ruins in a radius of 100 miles. They were all severed limbs of the demonic beasts. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao were both bathed in blood. Their hair was disheveled as they stood above the ruins. The two of them had exhausted too much of their dermic powers. They had no choice but to take out pills and consume them to silently recover their dermic powers. In the sky in front of them, the evil green dragon carried the twin flower demons and flew over at a moderate speed. It stopped 1,000 feet away from the two of them. The two sides faced each other above the ruins that were filled with smoke and dust. Both of them were filled with murderous intent, and their postures were unyielding. The evil flower demon stood on the back of the evil dragon, while the female flower demon stood on its shoulder. They looked down at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The female flower demon stared at the two of them coldly. She said in a serious tone, "I have to admit that your strength and methods have indeed surprised me. I can't remember how many years it has been since I last met such monstrous warriors like you. Actually, I admire genius warriors like you very much. Therefore, I will give you one last chance. Kneel down and admit defeat. If you submit to me, I will spare your lives." The evil flower demon also said in a powerful voice, "If you are loyal enough and perform well, I will teach you the secret of immortality and appoint you to lead the entire illusory mountain range." Its voice was filled with a powerful soul-sucking power. It contained the power to suck one's soul. If a warrior's mind was weak and did not have enough willpower, they would be bewitched by its voice. Their willpower would also waver. However, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were not ordinary people. The two of them had strong willpower. They did not take the twin flower demon's words to heart at all. Ji Tianxing secretly transmitted his voice to Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, the flower demon mentioned the secret of immortality. It is probably referring to the divine pearl hidden in the Flower Valley." "Yes." Yin Yao nodded and said in a serious tone, "According to the situation in the 100 Flower Valley, that divine pearl is very likely the divine pearl of immortality. I can sense that the divine pearl is not on the twin flower demons. It is still in the depths of the 100 Flower Valley." A murderous intent flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes. he said in a low voice. It seems that we have to get rid of the twin flower demons to find that divine pearl. Just as the two of them were discussing through voice transmissions, the female flower demon saw that the two of them did not respond. She was enraged and urged, "Bastards, did you hear what I said? My patience is limited. I will only give you 10 seconds to consider. After 10 seconds, if you do not submit, only death awaits you." When she finished speaking, Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked at her coldly. His lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. "You are just a flower demon. How dare you be so arrogant? What a joke. Why do you need 10 seconds? Let me tell you now. You want us to submit? You are not worthy. The ones who will die are you." As he spoke, a golden light surged from Ji Tianxing's body and a murderous aura that shook the heavens. A giant golden sword that was thousands of feet tall appeared behind him and flew into the sky. The majestic and dazzling sword flickered with golden light and exuded a sacred aura. "White Tiger Sacred Sword," Ji Tianxing roared with murderous intent. He controlled the 1,000-feet-tall golden sword and slashed it at the twin flower demons. The golden light from the giant sword condensed into the image of a white tiger that was as large as a mountain. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws. This sword was like a golden rainbow that split the sky. It could split the heavens and earth. Its power was so terrifying that the twin flower demon's expressions changed. The giant sword locked onto the evil green dragon's aura. Its eyes were filled with fear. However, it was carrying the twin flower demons and did not dare to act on its own. It could only brace itself and face the attack. The twin flower demons worked together to cast a spell. They released vines and 5-colored lights that covered the sky and earth to meet the white tiger sacred sword. Boom! 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 In the next moment, a deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. The dazzling golden light and 5-colored lights instantly collapsed and spread in all directions, covering a radius of hundreds of miles. The giant white tiger image also enveloped the twin flower demons and the evil green dragon. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions, creating a monstrous hurricane. Chapter 1704. The loud noise shook the heavens, and the earth trembled violently. The entire flower valley shook, and the mountains on both sides collapsed, collapsing countless boulders and soil. The power of the white tiger sacred sword was terrifying. Everything within a few hundred miles was shaken, and almost turned into ruins. The twin flower demons' counterattack was shattered by the giant sword, and they collapsed on the spot. They were also hit by the giant sword, and they screamed as they flew backward, crashing 20 miles away. Just as they were about to crash into the ground, the ugly flower demons extended hundreds of vines and stabbed them into the ground, finally stabilizing their bodies. With their tribulation transcendence realm strength, they quickly offset the power of the white tiger sacred sword and only suffered minor injuries. However, the evil green dragon was unlucky. It did not have time to dodge, and it was not as powerful as the twin flower demons. It was hit by the white tiger sacred sword on the spot. The 1,000-feet-tall primordial soul golden sword cut it in half. The cut was very smooth, and dark red blood spurted out like a fountain. The extreme pain made it try its best to open its flat mouth, and let out a sharp and ear-piercing hiss. The two halves of the body fell into the ruins, twisting and bouncing madly. Its vitality was incomparably tenacious. Even if its body was cut in half, its body could still survive. Swoosh! The severed tail flew toward the front half of its body, trying to reattach it. However, Ji Tianxing controlled the primordial soul golden sword and slashed with all his strength. Bam! With a deafening muffled sound, the primordial soul golden sword slashed the evil dragon's head. Its flat head was split open by the giant sword on the spot, and blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. A dark green eyeball was mixed in with it. With this sword, the evil dragon was killed on the spot. It could not be more dead. Not only was its body destroyed, but even its primordial soul did not have time to escape, and was instantly killed by the golden sword. After the broken corpse twitched a few times, it fell powerlessly into the ruins. The flying soil quickly buried its body. The evil dragon, which was at the first stage of the tribulation transcendence realm, was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that. The twin flower demons witnessed the entire process with their own eyes. They were stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing. When they came back to their senses, they became even more furious and irritable. Monstrous killing intent surged out from their bodies and condensed into blood-red flames around them. Damned reptile, I'll tear you to shreds. Die. Only by torturing and killing all of you 10 times can this monarch's hatred be dispelled. The twin flower demons roared with murderous intent. They immediately charged over and used their secret techniques to attack Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Heart-slaying evil spear. Flying flower remnant dream. The ugly flower demon waved its 4 arms and released thousands of dark green vines, which transformed into thousands of javelins that were over 100 feet long. They rained down on Ji Tianxing and his companion. Every spear formed from vines was comparable to a low-grade tribulation-level magical treasure. They could pierce through all obstacles and unleash destructive power. Thousands of sharp spears stabbed at the same time, sealing off the area within a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had nowhere to run. The female flower demon waved her slender arms and palms, scattering colorful petals that blotted out the sky and earth. The seemingly weak and colorful petals were highly toxic and could unleash destructive power. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already seen the power of the petal shower, so they naturally didn't dare to be careless. Seeing the rain of spears coming at them, the couple's expressions turned serious. Intense fear flashed across their eyes. Ji Tianxing was about to spread his golden wings to protect himself and Yun Yao. However, Yun Yao was faster than him. She hurriedly took out a palm-sized ice crystal statue and raised it above her head. This ice crystal statue was a lifelike woman in a blue dress. That woman's face was beautiful and graceful. Her aura was mysterious and holy. Without a doubt, this was the statue of the Luoshui martial god. Boundless dermic power surged out of Yun Yao's palm and entered the statue of the Luoshui martial god. Immediately, the ice crystal statue emitted a dazzling icy blue light, forming a light screen that was 100 feet in radius. The icy blue light screen immediately enveloped Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing, protecting them tightly. In the next moment, the overwhelming spears and the rain of flowers struck the icy blue light screen at the same time. Boom! 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 Amidst the earth-shattering sounds, the dark green rattan spears and colorful petals exploded, unleashing destructive power. The icy blue light screen trembled violently from the explosion, creating layers of ripples. However, Yun Yao stood upright. Her hand holding the ice crystal statue did not move at all. Her expression was firm. The icy blue light screen was also undamaged. Not a single crack appeared. It was peaceful inside the light screen. It was not affected at all. Outside the light screen, however, was another scene. It was like another world. The destructive power of the explosion blasted the ruins and the mountain ranges on both sides of the Flower Valley into huge craters that were thousands of feet deep. Within 200 miles, there was not a single mountain range or mound. Not even a stone the size of a water tank could be found. Whether it was the towering mountain range or the millstone, they were all blasted into powder. Such a peerlessly terrifying power was truly capable of destroying everything. After a long time, the smoke and dust in the sky dissipated. The area within 200 miles had completely turned into a 1,000-foot deep crater. It was impossible to distinguish the valley from the flat ground. Half of the Flower Valley was destroyed just like that. Only then did Yun Yao put away the ice crystal statue and remove the icy blue light screen. Ji Tianxing glanced at the ice crystal statue and asked telepathically, "Yao Yao, what treasure is this?" Yun Yao hurriedly replied, "It's a protective treasure that Granny Long gave me, the Luotian spirit. It can only be used 3 times, and the statue will shatter." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. Then, he and Yun Yao flew across the sky side by side and headed straight for the twin flower demons. The twin flower demons were 20 miles away in the sky. They were looking around with pity. The Flower Valley was their home. Now that 1/3 of it had been destroyed, how could they not be heartbroken? The most hateful thing was that even though they had sacrificed so much, they were unable to hurt Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Seeing that the two of them were unharmed, the twin flower demons were furious and shocked. They turned around and fled into the depths of the flower valley without hesitation. Damn bastards. They really do have powerful protective treasures. We can't fight them head-on. Let's avoid them for now. The two secret techniques, just now, were the twin flower demons' most powerful techniques. If Yin Yao did not use the Divine Master statue, she and Ji Tianxing would have been killed. The twin flower demons knew that even if they continued fighting, they would not be able to gain the upper hand. Since that was the case, they could only escape into the depths of the flower valley and think of another way. Swoosh! The twin flower demons turned into a dark green stream of light and streaked across the sky, heading straight for the depths of the flower valley. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao also flew across the sky and chased after them. Chapter 1705. In the depths of the 100-flower valley. The ground of the 100-mile-wide valley was covered in lush flowers and plants. Almost every flower and plant was an evolved version of ordinary spirit herbs. They grew extremely strong and demonic. The air was filled with the pungent smell of pollen, which contained a strong poison. In addition, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could sense that the world was filled with strong divine power fluctuations. Yun Yao used her mind to sense, and could clearly sense that the divine pearl's aura was nearby. The husband and wife stood in the sky, holding swords in their hands as they looked coldly ahead. 5 kilometers ahead was the end of the flower valley. At the end of the valley was a 2-kilometer-tall mountain. The mountain walls below the mountainside were covered in moss, vines, and green weeds. There was a huge cave at the foot of the mountain. A circle of purple-red poisonous flowers climbed up the cave entrance. The twin flower demons stood outside the cave, facing off against Ji Tianxing and his wife. Without a doubt, that ancient cave was the twin flower demon's lair. Damned insects, how dare you chase us here? You're courting death. The twin flower demons stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao with venomous eyes, and sneered mockingly. We've occupied this flower valley for 2,000 years. During this time, who knows how many warriors have entered this place, but they were all killed by us. Haven't you ever thought about why we're invincible? At this moment, the twin flower demons no longer had a trace of worry or fear. Her expression and tone were filled with absolute confidence and a strong sense of success. Yun Yao glanced at her and turned to look around. She said calmly, "You're relying on nothing more than the divine item hidden in the flower valley. Since we dared to enter this place, we have enough confidence to kill you and take the divine item. I don't know what you're so proud of." Hearing this, the twin flower demon's smile instantly froze. Her expression and eyes slowly turned cold. She frowned fiercely. Her eyes were filled with strong killing intent as she sneered again. "Ha ha ha. No wonder you guys pressed on step by step and rushed here without a care for anything. It turns out that you guys have long coveted this monarch's treasure. Since that's the case, then all the more you deserve to die. You only know that there are divine items in the depths of Flower Valley. But you don't know that this is not a treasure trove or a holy land, but a purgatory of death." As soon as she finished speaking, Ji Tianxing frowned and said coldly, "You talk too much nonsense." As he spoke, he once again summoned his primordial spirit golden sword, and his entire body radiated a golden light that soared into the sky. In addition, the sword of burial of heaven also flew into the sky and instantly expanded to a height of 3,000 meters, transforming into a towering pitch-black sword. In the next moment, Ji Tianxing turned into a golden light and merged with the golden sword. Immediately after, the burial of heaven fused with the essence soul golden sword, causing the golden sword's power to increase by several times. The golden sword of the soul had also turned dark gold, mixed with wisps of mysterious black light. Heaven-splitting sword. The giant sword descended from the sky and slashed towards the twin flower demons with an unparalleled divine power. Before the sword radiance arrived, the terrifying suppressive force had already suppressed the twin flower demons, making it difficult for them to move and slowing them down by more than 2 times. The twin flower demon's divine soul aura was also locked down. This sword had nowhere to run, and there was no way for them to avoid it. Damn it! The twin flower demon's expression changed drastically, and they let out a furious scream. The ugly flower demon did not have time to use its trump card, so it could only use its ultimate technique, with all its might to block the attack of the giant sword of the soul. At the critical moment, it waved its four arms wildly, releasing thousands of green vines that wrapped around the giant sword of the soul. The flower demoness unleashed all of her power, releasing a multicolored radiance that formed a gigantic barrier of light, blocking the sky above her head. Bang! 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 At the same time, the destructive giant sword of the soul slashed down fiercely, hitting countless vines and the colorful light shield. Those flexible vines were impervious to water and fire, and could withstand the attack of a tribulation-level Dharma treasure. However, they couldn't withstand the power of the sword. At least 500 vines were severed on the spot by the giant sword of the soul. They turned into pieces and flew out. Immediately after, the giant sword of the soul shattered the colorful light shield and slashed the twin flower demons. Boom! Crack! Amidst a deafening sound, the twin flower demons were slashed into the ground by the giant sword. A 15-kilometer-long ravine was formed on the ground that was covered in flowers. It was like a natural chasm. The entire flower valley trembled violently and shook crazily. The violent shockwave swept to both sides like a huge wave, crushing countless flowers and plants. The mountain ranges on both sides of the flower valley were also torn apart by the impact and collapsed with a rumble. The golden light and dust that blotted out the sky lasted for a long time before dissipating. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianqing returned to Yun Yao's side. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand, and the 10,000 feet tall essence soul golden sword floated in the sky behind him. In front of him and Yun Yao, the ground had already turned into ruins. It was covered in cracks and fragments of flowers and plants. A series of rustling sounds came from the wide and deep ravine. A moment later, the twin flower demons flew out of the ravine and returned to the sky. Although the twin flower demons were powerful and successfully blocked the sword, and were not killed, they were in a miserable state. However, their appearances were extremely miserable. They were already heavily injured. The ugly flower demon's body had been split into two. It had lost 2 arms and half of its body. There was no bleeding from its wounds, but dark green liquid kept flowing out. It dripped onto the ground and corroded the soil into ashes. Half of the female flower demon's head had been chopped off, and her left arm had disappeared. Green liquid kept gushing out of the wound. Dense green sprouts and branches also appeared. It looked rather strange. They secretly used a mystic technique to absorb some kind of energy and were healing their injuries. Those hideous and terrifying wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and new bodies were quickly growing out. The flower demoness glared at Ji Tianqing with venomous eyes. Her voice was hoarse as she growled, "You damned reptile! I will let you have your soul devoured by 10,000 poisons and die in extreme pain." As she roared, the female flower demon waved her arms as fast as lightning and formed several array seals. 10,000 poisons soul-devouring array. The ugly flower demons also joined forces to cast a spell. They waved their arms and released an earth-shattering radiance of Dharma power. Suddenly, all the flowers and plant fragments within a 100-mile radius silently melted into 5-colored air currents and gathered in the sky. In a short while, the entire flower valley turned into a grayish-brown desert. There was no green or color at all. The endless 5-colored air currents condensed into a thick sky curtain that covered the entire 100-mile radius. This area had been sealed. After the formation was formed, it gathered a powerful force of heaven and earth, and fiercely suppressed Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. The poisonous gas in the air suddenly became dozens of times stronger. There were also many types of poisons. Chapter 1706. Even though Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had special physiques, and were immune to all poisons, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had the talent of being immune to poison. However, the formation cast by the twin flower demons contained the poisonous power of tens of thousands of poisonous flowers and herbs. Its power was extremely terrifying. If it were an ordinary essence soul realm cultivator, they would have been corroded by the poison on the spot and turned into a pool of blood. The two of them were only corroded by the poison, and their internal organs were slightly injured. It was already a very rare thing. Moreover, Ji Tianqing took out a pale golden pill from his interspatial ring and handed it to Yun Yao. After Yun Yao took the pill, the effects of the pill quickly suppressed the poison in her body. Ji Tianqing secretly activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl and used the sacred white light to quickly remove the poison. In the blink of an eye, the two of them returned to normal. Black blood no longer flowed out of their mouths and noses. The two of them joined forces to cast spells and used all their strength to resist the suppression. The twin flower demons were shocked when they saw this scene. They only felt disbelief. How is this possible? My soul-devouring poison is actually ineffective against them? Even a tribulation transcendence realm cultivator would be severely injured after being corroded by the soul-devouring poison, let alone an essence soul realm cultivator. These two human worms can actually resist the power of the soul-devouring poison and the suppression of the formation. It's simply unbelievable. The two flower demons were shocked. Their hearts were filled with horror and anger. They desperately released their dermic powers and fully activated the power of the formation to suppress Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Suddenly, the power of the soul-devouring poison that filled the world more than doubled. The poison was originally invisible, but now it appeared as colorful air currents that intertwined and flowed in the sky. Over 10,000 types of highly toxic poisons were gathered together, emitting an incomparably fishy and pungent smell that caused one's head to swell and caused one's divine sense to become blurry and chaotic. The suppression power of the formation also increased by about 2 times. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's faces became as pale as paper again. Cold sweat broke out all over their bodies, and their bodies became much more bent. However, the two of them used their secret techniques and tenaciously held on. As for the 5-colored poison between heaven and earth, the two of them relied on the effects of the heaven-mending beads and medicinal pills to keep the poison out of their bodies. A full 100 breaths of time passed. Their complexions became even paler. Their bodies were drenched in sweat, and their waists were bent over in pain. Other than that, neither of them were injured, nor did they fall. This result made the twin flower demons even more shocked and furious. The flower demoness's dark purple pupils flashed with fury and killing intent. She said in a low voice, "Underworld tree, we can't go on like this. The strength of those two insects is far beyond our imagination. I'm afraid they will be able to hold on for a long time. We haven't met such a difficult opponent in over 500 years. The flower valley that we have painstakingly built has been destroyed in a day. If we don't execute those two worms and use the cruelest method to kill them, how can we vent our hatred?" The ugly flower demon twisted its body and growled murderously. "If that's the case, we can only use that trump card. I don't believe that after using those 2 trump cards, I won't be able to kill those 2 worms." The flower demoness licked her lips and nodded. "All right, we'll do it the same way." Then she waved her slender arms. Purple light shot into the sky from her body and turned into a blood-colored figure that was hundreds of meters tall. She, who was originally small, had turned into a huge and tall blood-colored giant. Her figure was hazy and blurry, and her appearance was hideous and terrifying. She was like a demon that had walked out of hell. She chanted an ancient and mysterious incantation and waved her 6 arms to form profound and mysterious seals. Suddenly, purple-red blood energy rushed out from the depths of the flower valley and madly gathered on her body. Her hundreds of meters tall blood-colored body became even more solid and thick and gave off a powerful oppressive aura. She stared at Yun Yao with a pair of large eyes that were shrouded in blood flames. She waved her enormous palms and sent out blood-colored palms that covered the sky. The ugly flower demon's enormous body also gave off a green light that covered the sky. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a dark green tree demon that was hundreds of meters tall. It had 2 enormous legs that were covered in roots. Its arms also turned into tens of thousands of green vines that looked like tens of thousands of tentacles. After it used its secret technique, a green light shot into the sky from the depths of the flower valley. A huge green pearl slowly flew out. That pearl was as big as a wash basin. After it broke out of the ground, It flew into the sky and quickly merged with the tree demon's body. Suddenly, its strength increased by more than 5 times. It became extremely powerful and sacred. It opened its enormous mouth and let out an angry roar. It waved its tens of thousands of vines and sent out thousands of threads of green light. Tens of thousands of rays of green light, like a rain of light blades and arrows, enveloped Ji Tianxing. When Yunyao saw the green pearl, her body immediately shook, and her eyes surged with a strong sense of surprise and anticipation. She could clearly feel that it was the green pearl that had been calling out to her. However, the giant tree demon had swallowed the green pearl. Without waiting for her to react, the blood-red palm shadows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth came straight at her. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing, who was not far away, shouted in a low voice, "Yao Yao, you deal with the tree demon. I'll deal with that flower demon." Obviously, this was the best choice. The hundreds of blood-red palm shadows that the flower demon had sent out contained a surging and strange demonic power. Ji Tianxing just happened to be able to counter it. Meanwhile, the rain of green light arrows released by the giant tree demon was closely related to Yunyao. She could also deal with it. Yunyao's mind was connected with his, so she immediately understood what he meant. Swoosh! Yunyao ignored the blood-red palm shadows that filled the sky. She waved her sword toward the rain of green light arrows and used a secret technique to block it. Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. He waved his hand and sent out a holy white light toward the dozens of blood-red palm shadows. Bam, 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 bam. In the next moment, a series of muffled sounds exploded in the flower valley. After the dozens of blood-red palm shadows were enveloped by the holy white light, they immediately melted like snow under the hot sun. Yunyao also used a secret technique to destroy the rain of green light arrows. She quickly swallowed the green light fragments. The trump card of the 2 flower demons was easily neutralized just like that. The 2 of them were stunned on the spot. They stared at Ji Tianxing and Yunyao dumbfounded. Their bodies seemed to have turned to stone. How is this possible? That's our most powerful trump card, our most sacred divine item. How did they block it? Even though they saw it with their own eyes, the 2 flower demons could not believe this scene. They could not accept this result. The blood-red light that surged out of the ground and the green pearl were the divine items that created the flower valley. They were also the source of power that gave birth to the twin flower demons. They treated these 2 treasures like gods and treated them as their strongest trump cards. However, even after using their most powerful trump cards, they still could not defeat Ji Tianxing and Yunyao. Chapter 1707. The 2 flower demons fell into a daze for a few breaths. Ji Tianxing didn't stop. After defeating the bloody palm, he immediately counterattacked. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. His body turned into a blazing fire, and a 1,000-meter-tall Essence Soul Sword appeared behind him. The Burial of Heaven sword also flew into the sky and instantly expanded to a height of 10,000 feet. It was as sacred and majestic as a giant pillar supporting the sky. The 3 instantly merged into a 1,000-meter-long giant sword surrounded by crimson fire. Whoosh! The giant sword unleashed an unparalleled power. Wrapped in a mountain-sized vermilion bird phantom, it slashed down from the sky toward Minglan. At that moment, the area within hundreds of miles was illuminated by fire. Half the sky turned crimson. The terrifying heat scorched the ground and the mountains into black scorched earth. When the giant sword was above her head, Minglan suddenly came to her senses. But before she could dodge, the vermilion bird sacred sword struck her head. Bam! With a deafening sound, Minglan's 1,000-meter-tall body was shattered into pieces by the giant sword. She collapsed into a bloody mist that blotted out the sky. Thousands of wisps of bloody mist spread out and mixed with the blazing crimson fire. It was difficult to distinguish them. The vermilion bird sacred sword struck the ground, creating a 50-mile-long trench in the ground. Smoke and dust rose into the sky. Half of the flower valley was destroyed on the spot, turning into black scorched earth ruins. The mountains and hills on both sides of the flower valley were also flattened. The entire flower valley was destroyed, turning into a giant crater. The dense scarlet mist quickly gathered together, trying to reform the body. But Ji Tianxing was prepared. The vermilion bird's sacred sword quickly separated, and his figure appeared. You're related to the demon race, and even used their secret arts. Damn it! His eyes were cold as he shouted angrily. He waved his palms and sent out a white light toward the bloody mist. Whoosh! The sacred white light enveloped an area of dozens of miles, enveloping the thousands of wisps of bloody mist. The evil bloody mist quickly dissipated when it met the sacred white light, and was purified into nothingness. In just a few breaths of time, the blood mist that filled the sky was completely wiped out and purified. The female flower demon Ming Lan was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that, not leaving behind a trace. The tree demon, the underworld tree, escaped from this area in a sorry state. It pierced through the white light and flew out 30 miles. It witnessed Ming Lan's death with its own eyes, and it was so angry that its eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It let out a furious howl. Reptile! You actually killed this monarch's wife. This monarch will grind your bones to dust. Ah! Unparalleled anger caused the underworld tree to descend into madness. Its 300-meter-tall tree demon body trembled violently as it crazily twisted its tens of thousands of vines, stabbing towards Ji Tianxing without any regard for the consequences. Supported by the power of the cyan light pearl, each of those vines extended for tens of miles, looking like a sharp spear that was about to pierce Ji Tianxing into a sieve. However, before the green glowing vines could reach them, Yun Yao charged forward with her sword. Demons and monsters quickly disperse. Heavenly water thousand swords art. She waved her sword, and her sleeves fluttered as sword light filled the sky. She released 9,999 rays of icy blue sword light that pierced forward like a flood. Bam bam bam. The icy blue sword light collided with the green glowing vines, causing a series of earth-shattering explosions that shook the earth for hundreds of miles. Without a doubt, all of the icy blue sword light was destroyed, turning into ice fragments that scattered among the ruins. The green glowing vines' power was also greatly reduced. When they reached Yun Yao, they were blocked by an icy blue light screen. Yun Yao gripped the ice crystal statue with a serious expression and injected vast amounts of magic power into it, activating a light screen that was hundreds of meters wide. The endless green glowing vines stabbed into the light screen, causing muffled bam 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 sounds. The light screen trembled violently and rippled, but it was still unbreakable. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing used the spirit concealment step and charged to the side of the underworld tree. The underworld tree sensed that something was wrong and immediately wanted to retract its vines. At the same time, a dark green light surged out of its body, forming a huge shield to protect itself. Unfortunately, it was all too late. Ji Tianxing stared at it fiercely. He suddenly raised his left hand and let out a murderous roar. God-slaying spear. Vast golden flames surged out of his left palm, forming a golden spear that was hundreds of meters long. He stabbed it at the underworld tree. Pop! With the sound of a bubble bursting, the dark green shield protecting the underworld tree was instantly pierced by the golden spear and shattered into pieces. Then, the invincible golden spear stabbed into the underworld tree's head and exploded with a boom. A dazzling golden mushroom cloud rose into the air. The dazzling golden light illuminated half of the flower valley, and even the sky was illuminated in a dazzling light. The underworld tree's 100-meter-tall body was blasted into tens of thousands of pieces and scattered in all directions. A dark green pearl was also tossed into the sky among the countless fragments of the branches. Yun Yao was already ready. She immediately flew over and shot out a ray of icy blue light, grabbing the dark green pearl in her hand. At the same time, a dark green primordial soul escaped in a panic. It turned around and fled into the distance. Ji Tianxing immediately chased after it. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his might. Sky-splitting sword. The sword of burial of heaven released a giant golden sword that was hundreds of meters long. It was surrounded by dazzling purple lightning and slashed at the primordial soul of the underworld tree. The underworld tree's original form was a tree demon. It belonged to the wood element and was most afraid of lightning and fire. The underworld orchid was a demonic flower that grew on the underworld tree. It was also afraid of lightning and fire. It was all thanks to the power of the dark green pearl that the two of them could successfully pass through 4 lightning tribulations. Otherwise, they would have been turned into ashes by the lightning tribulations. At this moment, the underworld tree had lost its most precious dark green pearl. Its body was also destroyed, and its power was greatly reduced. When the golden lightning sword slashed at it, it was extremely frightened and panicked. It sped up and fled desperately. Unfortunately, no matter how fast it was, it could not be faster than Ji Tianxing's sword. Bam! With a muffled explosion, the underworld tree's primordial soul was hit by the golden sword and was surrounded by thousands of lightning arcs. Crackling sounds of thunder could be heard. Its primordial soul was torn apart by the lightning and shattered into several pieces. However, its vitality was abnormally strong. It did not die even after its primordial soul was shattered. A few pieces of its primordial soul even gathered together and wanted to reform. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing thought to himself, as expected of the longevity divine pearl. It actually contains such terrifying vitality. The underworld tree has occupied the divine pearl for countless years. Under the baptism of the divine pearl's power, it still has such tenacious vitality. I hope that after Yao Yao refines this longevity divine pearl, she can extend her life and greatly increase her lifespan. Chapter 1708. Hundreds of fingernail-sized primordial spirit fragments fell from the sky. The 4th level tribulation transcendence realm tree demon was killed just like that. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a golden light, collecting all the fragments in the sky. A black hole appeared in his right palm and immediately swallowed all the primordial spirit fragments. Since entering the Phantom Mountain range, we have killed hundreds of demonic beasts. Only these 2 twin flower demons are the strongest. After the burial of heaven devours their primordial spirit fragments, it should be able to recover a lot of primordial spirit, right? With that thought in mind, he turned and flew toward Yin Yao. Yin Yao was standing in the sky, holding the basin-sized dark cyan pearl with both hands, and looking at it with a gratified expression. The round pearl was sparkling and translucent, flickering with a bright cyan light. It was breathing rhythmically, as if it had a life of its own. The pearl emitted a majestic aura of life. It was enough to change the world and turn the endless desert into a forest. Ji Tianxing only took a few breaths of the aura of life and felt that his lifespan had increased by a few years. This is the longevity divine pearl, one of the 7 soul divine pearls? What an incredible divine object. Whoever has this divine pearl will definitely be immortal. Yin Yao looked up at him and shook her head gently. This is indeed the longevity divine pearl. It is very compatible with my soul and has a close connection. After I fuse with this divine pearl, I will have the 3 souls. I think my lifespan will be extended by many years. However, it is unrealistic to use this divine pearl to achieve immortality. Even a martial god, who has just entered the divine Tao, can't escape the 10,000-year lifespan limit. If one could gain immortality by obtaining this divine pearl, countless martial gods would fight over it like crazy. This divine pearl won't be here, and it will be impossible for us to obtain it. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment, and felt that it made sense. He nodded and said, "That's true. Although the divine pearl is magical, it can't change one's fate. It can't help one break through the 10,000-year limit." Yin Yao kept the dark cyan pearl and said with a gratified expression, "Tianxing, we've got the longevity divine pearl. Our trip is considered a success. Let's go. Let's return to the Luotian mountain first. I'll slowly refine it." Ji Tianxing nodded and flew out of Flower Valley with her side by side. The two of them flew over the scorched earth and ruins. They saw that the Flower Valley, which was 100 miles wide and 500 miles long, was completely destroyed. A moment later, the two of them were halfway through their flight. At this moment, the entire Flower Valley ruins shook violently, as if a super earthquake had occurred. A series of muffled rumbling noises came from the depths of the ground. The ground continued to crack, and huge pits were formed. Countless amounts of soil surged upwards, and black ash and smoke covered the sky. Blood-red flames surged out from the ground, drowning the entire flower valley. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao hurriedly flew up into the sky, away from the blood-colored sea of fire. What's going on? The twin flower demons are already dead. Why is there a sudden change in Flower Valley? Yin Yao frowned in confusion. Ji Tianqing frowned and observed for a moment. He said in a low voice, "Since this Flower Valley was created by the longevity divine pearl, it's also an evil place full of devil qi. Now that the twin flower demons are dead, the formation protecting Flower Valley has collapsed. Of course, this area will be destroyed. This is good too. If this evil and filthy place is destroyed, there won't be any future troubles." Just as he finished speaking, a series of cracking noises came from the depths of the raging sea of fire. That kind of sound was like the sound of a pile of broken bones rubbing against each other. It made one's hair stand on end. Ji Tianqing's expression changed instantly. A thick murderous aura flashed across his eyes. What a powerful devil qi. Oh no, there's probably a giant demon hiding in the depths of Flower Valley. It's going to wake up now. As he said that, he pulled Yin Yao and flew high into the sky. They flew out as fast as lightning. However, endless white bones and skeletons surged out of the surging bloody sea of fire. They surged like a tide and chased out of the Flower Valley. Tens of thousands of white bones and skeletons surged and flowed rapidly. They were about to condense into a giant demon. When Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao flew to the entrance of Flower Valley, the tide of white bones had also condensed into a white bone giant demon that was hundreds of feet tall. It was as big as a mountain. Not only did this white bone giant demon have a huge body, but it also had strong arms and legs. It also had 2 huge skulls. Upon closer inspection, its head was formed by tens of thousands of human skulls. Its body was also formed by countless human skeletons. Its entire body was surrounded by a crimson red light. It rose like a raging flame. It exuded an extremely bloody and evil aura. On its 2 heads, there were 2 pairs of deeply sunken eye sockets. For balls of bloody fire were jumping in them. Those were its eyes. They contained a powerful demonic power. Crack, crack, crack. The white bone giant demon opened and closed its big mouth. It let out an ear-piercing sound of friction. It grinned coldly. It leaped into the sky and immediately caught up with Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. "You destroyed my habitat and still want to escape? Dream on." The white bone giant demon opened its huge white bone mouth and let out a muffled roar. Its entire body burst out with a murderous aura. As it spoke, it waved its pair of huge white bone palms and unleashed an overwhelming gray fog. It attacked Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. The rolling gray fog was like a monstrous flood. It spread in the sky and covered a radius of hundreds of miles. The gray fog was the aura of death. It contained a terrifying corrosive power that could cause life to wither and everything to die. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao were enveloped by the gray fog. They were instantly trapped in a gray cage. They could not tell north from south. The formless qi of death immediately attacked their bodies, causing their bodies to wither rapidly and their hair to turn white. In just a few breaths, more than half of their vitality was lost. They turned from young men in the prime of their lives to old and withered white-haired old men. Such a strange and powerful secret art shocked Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. They were extremely afraid. Fortunately, Yin Yao quickly took out the longevity divine pearl. She cast a spell and activated the power of the divine pearl. It released 2 dark green light beams. Swish! Swish! The dark green light beam drilled into their bodies and immediately replenished their boundless vitality. In the blink of an eye, the 2 of them turned back from white-haired old man and old woman to young men in their 20s. Ji Tianqing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb again. He waved his hand and unleashed a giant white sword of light that was 1,000 feet long. It broke a huge crack in the gray fog cage. The gray fog of death was quickly dispersed when it encountered the sacred white light. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao escaped the gray fog cage and continued to fly out of the Flower Valley. Seeing this scene, the white bone giant demon was stunned. The blood-red fire in its 4 white bone eye sockets danced wildly. It obviously did not expect that Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao could remain in their original state and not be killed by the aura of death. Chapter 1709. The white bone troll was only stunned for a moment before it streaked across the sky and chased after Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Its strength was even more terrifying than the twin flower demons, and its speed was as fast as light. As it flew, a gray fog surged around its body, covering the sky and the sun. Any living thing within 25 miles of it, whether it was flowers, grass, trees, birds, or beasts, would instantly lose their vitality and wither into a pile of black ash. Such a strange and powerful lethality was truly peerlessly terrifying and frightening. In just 10 seconds, the white bone troll had caught up with Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The white bone troll was about to attack again. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and used his ultimate move to attack. Broken Moon Sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and used all his strength to slash out a 1,000-foot-long giant sword. The dark golden giant sword slashed towards the white bone troll with unstoppable power that could kill everything. The power of this sword was enough to split mountains and rivers and split the land within 50 miles. However, the white bone troll turned a blind eye to it. It waved its hand and shot out a gray fog to meet the golden giant sword. Bam! A deafening sound rang out as the surging gray fog collided with the giant sword, exploding with a dull sound. The gray fog of death did not dissipate and actually blocked the giant sword's power. Soon, the golden giant sword was corroded and dissipated. Ji Tianxing's attack was neutralized, but he was unwilling to give up and stabbed with his sword. Piercing sword. The sword of burial of heaven shot out a cold light that instantly traversed 20 miles in the sky and hit the white bone troll. However, a thick gray fog gathered in front of the white bone troll like a shield. The cold light exploded in the gray fog, and a cold light soared up and covered the sky. The gray fog was shattered by the explosion and scattered in the sky. The white bone troll was not injured at all. It became even more ferocious as it swung its giant white bone palm. Bam! Bam! Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could not dodge in time, and were hit by the giant white bone palm. They were sent flying, and crashed into the mountains dozens of miles away. Boom! The lush, dark green mountain range was immediately smashed apart by the violent impact, causing dirt and rocks to splatter everywhere. Hundreds of towering trees were also swept away by the shockwave. They fell to the ground uniformly, and were crushed into dregs. When Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao crawled out of the ruins and flew back into the sky, they were already covered in dust, and their faces were covered in blood. Both of them were heavily injured. They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Tianxing, this giant demon is a 10,000 skeleton demon. It's formed from the bones of tens of thousands of human martial artists over thousands of years. It's extremely terrifying. Its strength is comparable to a powerhouse at the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It's impossible for us to be its opponent. We can't be entangled with it anymore. We have to find a way to get rid of it. Yun Yao stared at the 10,000 skeleton demon with a solemn expression, and secretly transmitted her voice to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, and replied to her through voice transmission. Those tens of thousands of skeletons are the powerhouses who broke into the 100-Flower Valley in the past 1,000 years. The weakest of them is at the Essence Soul realm. There is no lack of Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses among them. This 10,000 skeleton demon not only gathered terrifying demonic power, but also mastered the deadly poison of the 100-Flower Valley. It's an evolved demon. I'm afraid it's not that easy to get rid of it. I have to use more means. As soon as he finished speaking, the 10,000 skeleton demon had already teleported over. It waved a pair of giant white bone fists and smashed them down from the sky. Once the giant white bone fists hit, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao would be smashed to pieces. There was no chance of survival. At the critical moment, Yun Yao summoned the Luotian spirit again, and was about to inject her magic power into the statue. She had already used it twice before. Now there was only one chance left. However, Ji Tianxing shouted through voice transmission, "Yao Yao, don't use the Luotian spirit so easily. Let me deal with it." As he said that, he glared at the 10,000 skeleton demon and shouted in a loud voice, "Thunder!" He suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead. Endless purple divine lightning surged out of the golden eye. It condensed into a pillar of divine lightning and blasted at the 10,000 skeleton demon. Kaboom! In the next moment, the 1,000-foot-long pillar of divine lightning struck the giant white bone fists with a loud bang. Immediately, the palace-sized giant white bone fists were shattered by the pillar of divine lightning. Dense white bones splattered everywhere. The 10,000 skeleton demon was also enveloped by the dazzling purple lightning. Its body tumbled and flew backward, falling 5 kilometers away. Crackling sounds of thunder rang out. The 10,000 skeleton demon trembled violently. Thousands of white bone fragments scattered all over its body. Soon after, there was another loud plop sound as it smashed into a mountain peak. The 10,000-foot-tall mountain peak was smashed into pieces and turned into a pile of ruins. The 10,000 skeleton demon rolled a few times on the ground and struggled for a moment. It roared a few times before shaking off the lightning arcs all over its body. When it climbed up from the ruins and flew back into the sky, its body was already incomplete. It was still emitting thick black smoke. It looked down at Ji Tianqing from above and shouted angrily, "Damn little reptile! You actually mastered the power of thunder!" Although the 10,000 skeleton demon's strength was unparalleled. But everything in this world was about mutual promotion and restraint. The sacred and violent thunder just happened to restrain the evil and filthy 10,000 skeleton demon. Although Ji Tianqing's strength was too low and could only cause some minor injuries and trouble, but this was still an obvious restraint. If Ji Tianqing also had the strength of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, even if he was only at the 3rd or 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, he would have absolute confidence in killing the 10,000 skeleton demon. The 10,000 skeleton demon twisted its body and waved its hands to release gray fog. It sucked the broken bones scattered in the ruins into its palms. Then it stuffed the messy broken bones into the wounds all over its body. After a series of cracking noises, its body was restored to its original state. Crack, crack, crack. Little reptile, so what if you control thunder? Your realm is too low. You're like an ant. How can you compete with me? Accept your death obediently. Your corpses will become a part of my body. The 10,000 skeleton demon grinned and laughed loudly. Its tone was extremely arrogant and savage. Wrapped in the gray fog that filled the sky, it rushed towards Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao again. This time it waved its palms and used a secret technique. It controlled the gray fog that filled the sky and condensed hundreds of gray blades, sealing off the area within a 50-mile radius. Dead Soul Ghost Blade. Each Dead Soul Ghost Blade was 1,000 feet long and contained an extremely terrifying aura of death, as if it came from the netherworld. Hundreds of ghost blades stabbed at the same time, locking onto the auras of Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao's primordial spirits, leaving them nowhere to hide. Once they were hit by the Dead Soul Ghost Blade, their primordial spirits would immediately be destroyed, and they would die on the spot. At this critical moment, Yin Yao no longer hesitated. She hurriedly channeled her majestic magic power and injected it into the ice crystal statue. Chapter 1710. In order to save her life, Yin Yao did not hesitate to use the Luotian spirit. This was the 3rd time she had used it, and it would also be the last time. Bam! 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 Hundreds of undead ghost blades hit the icy blue light shield, producing a series of dull sounds. The light shield trembled continuously from the attacks, and ripples appeared, but it did not shatter. Cracks began to appear on the ice crystal statue in Yin Yao's hand, and it began to make cracking sounds. Pieces of ice crystals peeled off from the statue and scattered on the ground. In a few seconds, the entire ice crystal statue would shatter, and the icy blue light shield would also dissipate. At the same time, Ji Tianqing took out a white talisman from his interspatial ring. This white talisman contained vast and mighty spatial power. It was a tribulation-grade transference talisman. The universal treasure box that Hong Qingtian gave Ji Tianqing contained more than 30 talismans with different effects. When Ji Tianqing encountered Ghost Child for the first time in the Arctic Abyss, he had used the transference talisman to escape. Now he and Yun Yao were forced into a dead end again, and they could only use this talisman to escape. A vast amount of dermic power surged from his fingertips, and he injected it into the transference talisman. Swoosh! The transference talisman was immediately activated, and golden flames ignited. The entire talisman turned into a ball of dense white light, and it immediately condensed into a white door of light in midair. This was a spatial portal that could teleport people thousands of miles away in an instant. Yao Yao, let's go! Ji Tianqing grabbed Yun Yao's wrist and entered the spatial portal as fast as the wind. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the two of them disappeared into the portal of light. In the next moment, the two of them could teleport to somewhere thousands of miles away through the portal and escape the pursuit of the 10,000 skeletal demon. However, things did not go as planned. The power of the 10,000 skeletal demon was beyond Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's imagination. Just as the two of them stepped into the portal and were about to disappear, the icy blue light shield shattered into pieces. Hundreds of millions of ice shards fell from the sky. The 10,000 skeletal demon's figure flashed, and it rushed to the portal. It raised its arms as fast as lightning, and a dazzling blood-red light shot out as it fiercely slammed into the white door of light. Kaboom! The white door of light had not dissipated before it was shattered by the 10,000 skeletal demon's attack. The spatial power was instantly disrupted. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had already entered the darkness and passed through the spatial tunnel, leaving this place. Unfortunately, after the spatial energy was disrupted, the spatial tunnel began to shake violently and quickly crumbled. No one could be sure what would happen next, and where the two of them would be teleported to. It might be somewhere hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, or hundreds of miles under the ground. There was also the possibility that the two of them would be lost in the layers of alternate spaces, never to return to the Xinwu continent. The only thing he could be sure of was that the space tunnel had been destroyed. It was impossible for the two of them to teleport safely thousands of miles away. In the next moment, somewhere in the dark underground, a cluster of dazzling white light suddenly burst out from the layers of rocks. Bam! Following a loud muffled sound, the white light blossomed and blasted a 3 feet wide hole in the hard brown rock layer. The white light was dazzling, and gravel flew everywhere. Two battered and exhausted figures rushed out of the big hole and crashed into the rock layer. The unparalleled force of impact shattered the rock layers within a radius of 10,000 feet, turning them into a huge cave. The two figures crashed into the ruins and were buried by the falling gravel. After a full 10 seconds, the two figures let out painful groans and struggled to climb out of the rubble. The first to climb out of the rubble was a young man in ragged clothes with disheveled hair. He was Ji Tianqing without a doubt. He was covered in blood, and he staggered toward another pile of rubble with a black and ancient broken sword in his hand. Yao Yao, how are you? His bloodshot eyes searched the rubble, and he called out anxiously and worriedly. In the rubble 100 steps away, Yun Yao coughed violently a few times before climbing out of the rubble. Her white dress was fluttering in the wind, and she looked like a holy fairy. But now, she was covered in wounds, and her long hair was messy. She looked very miserable. The blood mixed with the soil, staining her white dress and covering her face. She bent over and gasped for breath, and blood kept flowing out of her nose and mouth. Ji Tianqing limped over and hurriedly supported her to check her injuries. The result was indisputable. Yun Yao was seriously injured like him. When the spatial tunnel collapsed, the explosion and the power of space folding almost crushed their bodies. Fortunately, they were talented and had special constitutions, which saved their lives. But their essence souls were seriously injured, and their bodies were covered in wounds. Their internal organs were also shattered and displaced, and blood kept flowing out. Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out a few healing pills and gave half of them to Yun Yao. After the pills entered her stomach, they quickly released a strong medicinal effect under the catalysis of magic power. Their injuries were under control, and their aura and strength gradually stabilized. Yun Yao raised her hand to wipe the blood and soil off her face. She looked around and asked weakly, "Tianqing, where are we?" Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that it was pitch black. He released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. After a while, he checked the situation clearly. His face immediately changed and he frowned. We are 50 miles underground. Above us is a piece of scorched earth and ruins. It seems to be the place where we fought with the twin flower demons. Yun Yao also frowned and said in a complicated tone, "What? We are back in the Flower Valley, and we are deep underground?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said angrily, "Originally, my great shift talisman could help us teleport thousands of miles and easily get rid of the 10,000 skeletal demons. I didn't expect the 10,000 skeletal demons to destroy the teleportation door and the spatial tunnel. Under a freak combination of factors, we couldn't control the direction of our teleportation, and we actually appeared here. We really underestimated the 10,000 skeletal demons." Yun Yao comforted him and said, "The spatial tunnel was destroyed. Most of the martial artists would have been killed by the explosion, or they would be lost in the folded space and disappear forever. We are already very lucky to be able to survive. Moreover, the 10,000 skeletal demons wouldn't expect us to return to the underground of the Flower Valley. This place is thousands of miles away from it. We have enough time to leave before it comes back." Ji Tianxing nodded. He pointed at a cave entrance 300 meters away and said, "There's a cave over there. I've checked it just now. There's a passage outside the cave. Let's go out from there." Chapter 17:11. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao passed through the cave and entered a spacious tunnel. This tunnel, which was located deep underground, was actually more than 10 zhang high and 3 zhang wide. The ground and the walls on both sides of the tunnel were paved with huge black rocks. They were flat and neat. It was obvious that this passage had been artificially created. The surface of the huge black rocks was covered with the marks of time. It was obvious that it had experienced a long time. Yun Yao frowned in confusion and asked, "Strange. The 100-Flower Valley has always been occupied by the Twin Flower Demon and the 10,000 Bone Demon. Why would there be an ancient tunnel deep underground?" Ji Tianxing looked at the end of the tunnel with a serious expression and said, "Yao Yao, the 10,000 Bone Demon came out from the bottom of the Flower Valley. This tunnel is probably related to it. Also, I can sense that the end of this tunnel is probably a demon's den. There's an extremely strong demon aura coming from it." Yin Yao nodded slightly and said, "I can sense it too. There's still the aura of the 10,000 Bone Demon here. It's very likely that it's hiding in its den. Are we still going in?" Ji Tianxing thought for a while, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Damn that 10,000 Bone Demon. It made us so miserable and almost lost our lives. How can we let it go so easily? It's even more impossible for us to escape like this. Alright, then we'll have to be even more careful." Yin Yao nodded in agreement with his decision and exhorted. Soon 15 minutes passed. The two of them walked along the pitch-black stone tunnel for more than 10 miles underground. They took several turns along the way. Finally, the two of them were about to reach the end of the tunnel. There was a straight and wide stone tunnel under their feet. 1,000 zhang in front of them was a pitch-black hall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao walked side by side. They both held their swords and were on high alert. Yun Yao suddenly frowned, and her gaze fell on the wall on the right side of the tunnel. She saw a grayish-white skull embedded in the pitch-black stone wall that was 30 zhang above the ground. Judging from its appearance, the skull belonged to a human martial artist. Moreover, it was a middle-aged man. Ji Tianxing observed it carefully for a while and discovered that the bones of the skull had been strengthened, making it comparable to an immortal divinity-level magical treasure. He could basically conclude that the owner of the skull was a human warrior at the primordial soul realm when he was alive. At this moment, Yun Yao pointed at the left wall of the tunnel. On the left side of the wall, there was also a skull 3 feet above the ground. The skull belonged to a human warrior at the primordial soul realm. The two skulls were facing each other, and both of them were looking down at the ground. It was quite strange. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao continued to move forward. They discovered that a pair of skulls were embedded in the rock walls on both sides of the passage, every 100 feet. Such meticulously arranged skulls made the pitch-black tunnel even more eerie. filled with a strange and terrifying atmosphere. Why inlay skulls on the walls? Could it be some kind of formation or ritual? Maybe the 10,000 skeletal demon deliberately arranged it to show its identity or dignity. The two of them walked along the tunnel for 10,000 feet and discussed secretly with each other. There were exactly 200 skulls embedded in the tunnel that was 10,000 feet long. Fortunately, when the two of them reached the end of the tunnel and stepped into the main hall, the skulls did not move, and there were no anomalies. The main hall was very spacious, with a radius of 1,000 feet, but it was not pitch black. The floor that was paved with black boulders was carved with dense, winding patterns of the ghost clan, which seemed to form a great formation. The formation was operating, and the secret runes were also shining with dark red or dazzling purple brilliance. They were constantly flickering, and their brightness was fluctuating. With the brilliance of the patterns of the formation, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao could see that the walls around the main hall were engraved with countless pictures of deities and ghosts. Most of the pictures were of ferocious demons and evil gods. In addition, in the four corners of the east, south, west, and north, there were 4 skulls embedded in the walls that were 100 feet above the ground. Those 4 skulls were also the skulls of human martial artists. Although they had been there for thousands of years, they had not turned grayish-white and were still sparkling like jade. Upon closer inspection, Ji Tianqing discovered that every skull had been tempered by lightning, and there were even tiny lightning patterns left on them. These 4 skulls belong to human martial artists in the Tribulation Transcendence realm, and they have experienced at least 5 lightning tribulations. This result made Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao frown. They increasingly felt that this main hall was strange, and there must be some secrets hidden. Fortunately, the 4 skulls were embedded in the walls without moving, and there were no abnormalities. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao ignored them for the time being, and continued to observe the situation in the main hall. In the north of the main hall, there was a 90 feet tall black altar on the ground close to the wall. It was unknown what material the altar was made of, but it was inlaid with many demon crystals and blood essence stones, emitting a strange rainbow light. This altar was also very old, and it had been there for at least 1,000 years. At the top of the altar was a blood pool that had a radius of 30 feet. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao checked the area, and saw that the sunken blood pool was filled with purplish-black blood. The blood was bubbling and surging. A very pungent smell of blood came from the blood pool, and filled the entire main hall. In addition to the bubbling blood, there was also a large ball of 5-colored light floating above the blood pool. Ji Tianqing took a closer look, and saw clearly that there were over 100 remnant souls in the water tank-sized ball of light. Some of the remnant souls were ice blue, some were dark red, and some were grayish-white. Every remnant soul represented a martial artist at the Essence Soul realm and above. However, the hundreds of remnant souls were not only of human martial artists, but also of demon beasts and martial artists of other races. Under the catalysis of the altar's power, the 5-colored ball of light slowly rotated. Every 15 minutes, a dark red stream of air would fly out of the ball of light and rise into the air. Ji Tianqing's gaze followed the stream of air and looked up. He saw a huge blood-red skeleton embedded in the north wall. It was a skeleton troll that was 1,000 feet tall. Its bones were dark red and flowed with red light, as if blood was flowing. The skeleton troll was embedded in the wall, and sat on a huge white bone throne. The white bones that were as translucent as jade formed a 20-foot-tall throne. Green, blue, and red gems and crystals were embedded in the throne. This scene was very strange, and there was a sense of horror and majesty. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were stunned for a moment. They looked at the blood skeleton and sized it up carefully. They saw that the blood skeleton's body was also formed by countless broken bones. Its skeleton and body were almost the same as a human woman's, except that it was more than 100 times larger. In the dark red skull, there was a pair of deeply sunken eye sockets. There was nothing inside. Its hands were placed on the armrests of the white bone throne, but its wrists were tied to the throne by thick bronze chains. Chapter 17:12. The gigantic blood skull sat upright on the white bone throne. A few thick bronze chains firmly tied its limbs and waist, binding it to the throne. Such a strange scene caused Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao to look at each other, and they revealed dense puzzlement. There's a skeletal ogre here too? And it's completely blood red? Is it the companion of the 10,000 bone devil? Just like the twin flower demon? No, it can't be that simple. If this skeletal ogre is the companion of the 10,000 bone devil, why is it imprisoned on the throne? The two of them looked at each other and secretly communicated with each other through voice transmission. However, at this moment, a dark red stream of air flew out of the five-colored ball of light above the altar and entered the blood skull's head. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao immediately sensed that the dark red stream of air was strengthening the blood skull and making its aura even stronger. The blood skull seemed to have sensed their presence. Scarlet flames suddenly lit up in its pitch-black, empty eye sockets. The fiercely dancing flames were its eyes. It stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Its aura was originally still, as if it was in a deep sleep. Now that it had woken up, it was exuding a powerful evil aura and releasing an unparalleled invisible pressure. Not good. It's awake. Ji Tianxing immediately sensed that something was wrong. He pulled Yun Yao away from the evil altar and quickly retreated. At the same time, rows of gemstone lamps suddenly lit up on the walls of the hall. The scarlet light immediately illuminated the entire hall. 200 scarlet rays of light also lit up the giant stone passageway outside the main hall. However, they weren't gemstone lamps. Instead, they were the eyes of skulls that were flashing with scarlet light. Crisp cracking sounds came from inside the stone passageway. They were as dense as raindrops and very rapid. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked at the stone passageway outside the hall and saw that the skulls embedded in the walls had all come to life. Every skull was wriggling and crawling out of the walls. Behind the skulls were many thin and short skeletons. Although the skeleton maintained the shape of a human, it was only half the height of a human. With a head the size of a normal person, it looked very out of place. When the skeletons crawled out of the wall, there was only a black hole left in the wall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao finally understood that the skulls were not embedded in the wall. It was just that their bodies were hidden in the wall, and their heads were exposed. They had been in a deep sleep all this time. Now the white skeletons were all awakened. They gathered in the giant stone passageway and majestically charged towards the main hall. The 200 skeletons gathered together like a grayish-white torrent, flickering with specks of red light. They were full of killing intent and bravery. They quickly rushed into the hall and pounced towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Even the 4 skulls of the tribulation stage experts in the corners of the hall drilled out of the walls. The bodies of these 4 skulls were all silver-white skeletons. Their bodies surged with dark red blood light, and their auras and strength were even more powerful. Crack! 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 With a crisp sound, the 4 silver skeletons also landed in the hall. They stood around Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, eyeing them covetously and slowly approaching them. 200 smaller skeletons also rushed to the center of the main hall, surrounding Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. The two of them were surrounded and were about to be torn to pieces by more than 200 skeletons. At this moment of extreme danger, the 300-meter-tall blood skeleton suddenly opened its mouth and let out an angry and majestic roar. Roar! The dry and hoarse roar was like the roar of a ferocious beast, but it contained a powerful and majestic aura. When the skeletons in the hall heard the blood skeleton's roar, they were so scared that their bodies trembled, and they retreated one after another. In particular, the 200 little skeletons retreated from the hall like a tide, and all of them slipped into the passageway outside the hall. The remaining 4 tribulation stage skeletons also retreated to the corner of the hall with fear, not daring to act rashly. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already raised the swords in their hands to their chests. They were ready to fight back at any time. Seeing this scene, both of them breathed a sigh of relief and slowly put down the swords in their hands. Yao Yao, we can't stay here for long. Let's leave quickly. Ji Tianxing pulled Yun Yao and turned to walk out of the hall. He had guessed that this place might be the lair of the skeletal demon. Even if he couldn't kill the skeletal demon, he could still vent his anger by destroying its lair. But he didn't expect that this place was not only the lair of the skeletal demon, but also more than 200 skeletons, and a mysterious and powerful blood skeleton. At this point, he could only give up his previous plan and leave this place as soon as possible. However, Yunyao stood still and said to him through voice transmission, "Tianqing, wait a minute. I think that blood skeleton is a little strange. Look at its eyes and its aura. It doesn't seem like it wants to kill us." Tianqing turned his head and looked at the blood skeleton's eyes. He stared at the two balls of blood flames that were dancing in them. He saw that the two balls of blood flames were dancing rhythmically, as if they contained some kind of meaning and were conveying some kind of thought. The blood skeleton's big mouth also opened and closed gently, as if it was talking, but it couldn't make a normal sound. Tianqing observed it for a moment and carefully sensed the changes in its aura. He immediately frowned. "Strange. It doesn't seem to be hostile to us. It's trying very hard to communicate with us. It seems like it has something to say to us." Yunyao quickly nodded in agreement. "Yes, I felt it too. Just now when those skeletons wanted to besiege us, it was also it who shouted to retreat and resolved our crisis." Tianqing grew more and more confused. He couldn't understand it. But this shouldn't be. Those skeletons were all afraid of it, so they obviously had to obey its orders. If that's the case, it must be the leader of the skeletons, just like the 10,000 bone demon. Why would it let us go? Yunyao shook her head gently and said through voice transmission, "I don't know what's going on either, but my intuition tells me that this blood skeleton is different from the 10,000 bone demon. I'm afraid there's a story behind it." While the two of them were discussing through voice transmission, the blood skeleton slowly turned its left hand, and a dark red blood-colored light appeared in its palm. Originally, its palm was facing down, and its arm was lying flat on the white bone throne. But now it turned its arm, palm facing up, and slowly reached out towards Tianqing. A ball of blood-red light floated in the middle of its palm, within which was a dark red crystal. Unfortunately, its wrist was bound by bronze chains, so it could only reach out a little bit, and couldn't move anymore. It moved its mouth slightly, as if it was trying to say something to Tianqing. However, it couldn't make any sound, nor could it use its divine will to communicate. Tianqing could only guess its intentions from its expression and movements. Chapter 17:13. The blood-red crystal was as big as Tianqing's fist. The shape of the crystal was irregular. Its surface was uneven and had many sharp edges. When Tianqing held the crystal in his hand, he could feel that the crystal was emitting a scorching heat and contained a terrifying power. He held the blood-red crystal in his hand and examined it for a while, but he couldn't find any clues. Therefore, he raised his head and looked at the blood skull. He asked tentatively, "Are you going to give this crystal to me?" The blood skull lowered its head slightly and looked down at him. The scarlet flames in its eye sockets also became much gentler. It actually nodded slightly in response to Tianqing's question. Tianqing's face immediately lit up. He said to Yunyao, "Yao Yao, it can actually understand my words." Yunyao also showed a gratified expression. She hurriedly urged, "Then hurry up and ask it about its identity and intentions. Find out what it wants to do." Tianqing looked up at the blood skull and asked, "You're trapped here. You're not in cahoots with the 10,000 bone demon, right?" The blood skull looked down at him motionlessly. The flames in its eye sockets flickered faster. It seemed to be thinking about his question. Tianqing and Yunyao both held their breaths and looked at it quietly, waiting for its answer. However, at this moment a loud muffled sound came from the passage outside the hall. It was accompanied by the sound of bones rubbing against each other. The blood skull, Tianqing, and Yunyao were all startled awake. They raised their heads and looked at the passage outside the hall at the same time. Tianqing was no stranger to the sound of bones rubbing against each other. He immediately realized that something was wrong. Not good. The 10,000 bone demon is back. Yunyao also nodded and said with a grave expression, "I can already sense its aura. It's just 15 kilometers away and is rushing over. Let's go." Tianqing immediately put away the blood-red crystal and pulled Yunyao to fly out. Yun Yao turned her head to look at the blood skull, only to discover that the blood skull had already raised his right hand and extended 2 fingers towards the northeast corner of the hall. She went blank for a moment before she understood what the blood skull meant. Tianqing, you can't go back the way you came. You'll be caught by the 10,000 skeletal demon. The blood skull has pointed out a path. We'll escape from there. As she spoke, she pulled Ji Tianqing towards the northeast corner of the hall. In the blink of an eye, the two of them arrived at a dark corner. On the pitch-black wall, there was a huge picture of a ghost god. In the middle of the pattern, there was a mysterious and complex array pattern that was shining with a dark red brilliance. Ji Tianqing stared at the patterns of the array, quickly thinking of ways to open and break it. At this moment, a beam of dark red light shot out of the blood skull's right hand and flew into the pattern of the ghost god. The pattern of the spell formation instantly started to operate, as if it were flowing with dark red blood. Shoo! 2 breaths later, the pattern of the spell formation opened, revealing a blood-colored vortex the size of a water tank. The vortex was as black as ink, and nothing could be seen inside it. However, both Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao knew that it was a teleportation portal. The two of them hesitated for a moment, but didn't step into the vortex rashly. Instead, they both turned their heads to look at the blood skull. The blood skull nodded slightly at them and waved his right hand, indicating that they shouldn't hesitate and leave immediately. Forget it. If we stay here any longer, we'll be caught by the 10,000 skeletal demon. Let's trust it this time. Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment before clenching his teeth and making up his mind. He pulled Yun Yao into the blood-colored vortex and disappeared with a whoosh. After they disappeared, the blood-colored vortex also rapidly dissipated. The pattern of the spell formation on the wall also became dim and unremarkable. It was as if nothing had happened. A few hundred miles away from the ruins of the 100-Flower Valley, in a dark green mountain range. Shoo! A beam of red light suddenly appeared in the sky, forming a dark red circle of light. 2 figures rushed out of the circle of light and appeared above the mountain range out of thin air. This man and woman were none other than Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. The two of them stood still in the sky and looked back. The dark red circle of light had already dissipated. Phew! We finally escaped. That blood skull didn't lie to us after all. It gave us a shortcut to escape. The two of them heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They looked around and discussed the situation. Soon, Ji Tianqing saw their surroundings clearly and identified their location. We're about 250 miles northeast of the 100-Flower Valley. The 10,000 skeletal demon won't be able to sense our aura and location. However, we still have to leave the Mirage Mountain Range as soon as possible to avoid any accidents. After saying that, he flew high into the sky with Yin Yao and left as fast as lightning. The two of them didn't dare to let down their guard, nor did they dare to stop and rest. After 2 days and 2 nights of continuous flight, they finally flew out of the Mirage Mountain Range. After leaving the dangerous Mirage Mountain Range, the couple could finally relax. Ji Tianqing summoned Qianyu and let it ride on their journey back to the Luotian Mountain. The couple sat on Qianyu's back and took out all kinds of pills and pills. They silently circulated their energy to heal their injuries and regulate their breathing. Half a month later, Qianyu carried Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao back to the Luotian Mountain. When the two of them returned to the Luotian Mountain, they still looked exhausted and travel-worn. Qianyu's injuries hadn't healed, and its magic power and primordial spirit were somewhat empty. It didn't look good. After returning to the Luotian Mountain, Ji Tianqing kept it in the Sword World and let it go into seclusion to heal its injuries. When he returned to the Cloud Water Palace, he let the Golden Dragon and the Black Eagle leave the Sword World and return to their respective secret rooms to heal their injuries. However, just as he and Yin Yao were about to enter the secret room to heal their injuries, Grandma Long's voice came from outside the door. Yin Yao, Ji Tianqing, I just got the news that you're back, so I came to see the situation. By the time he finished speaking, Granny Long had already stepped into the room. After Grandma Long entered the room, her gaze fell on Yin Yao. Seeing Yun Yao's travel-worn and slightly disheveled appearance, she immediately revealed a worried expression. Yun Yao, are you okay? Are you injured? What kind of danger did you encounter? Yun Yao hurriedly saluted Granny Long and greeted her. Greetings, Grandma Long. I'm indeed injured, but it's nothing serious. The journey to the 100 Flowers Valley this time was a bit complicated. Please allow me to slowly explain. Grandma Long quickly pulled Yun Yao to sit down and listened to her recount the cause of the incident. Ji Tianxing wasn't in a hurry to go into seclusion to heal his injuries, so he sat down next to Yun Yao. After a full quarter of an hour, Yun Yao finally finished telling the story. The twists and turns of the experience and the dangers made Grandma Long very worried for the two of them. Fortunately, in the end, Yun Yao successfully obtained the divine pearl and successfully escaped from the demon's den. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. I didn't expect that the Phantom Mountain Range and the 100 Flowers Valley were even more dangerous and terrifying than the legends. Chapter 1714. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's encounter made Granny Long sigh with emotion. She looked at Yun Yao with concern and said earnestly, Yun Yao, before Divine Official Luo left, he repeatedly told you to stay in the Luotian Mountain to recuperate. You've already experienced a life and death crisis in the 100 Flower Valley. Now that you've returned safely and obtained the divine pearl, you can stay in the Luotian Mountain with peace of mind. Don't take any more risks. If something were to happen to you, this old one wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. Yun Yao understood Granny Long's concerns and nodded. Don't worry, Granny. There's a divine pearl in the 100 Flower Valley. I have to go there. Now that I've obtained it, I won't take any more risks. In the following period of time, I will stay in Cloud Water Palace and refine that divine pearl in peace. Hearing her say this, Granny Long felt relieved and nodded. That's good. If you have any difficulties, don't hesitate to tell this old woman, and this old woman will help you solve them. All right, you should go into seclusion to heal and refine the divine pearl as soon as possible. Yun Yao cupped her hands in salute and said goodbye. Then she turned around and entered the secret chamber. Only Granny Long and Ji Tianxing were left in the room. Granny Long's expression turned grave. She looked at Ji Tianxing with burning eyes and asked, Tianxing, you said you encountered a 10,000 skeletal demon in the 100 Flower Valley? And a devil's den? Why don't you tell me in detail what's going on? Granny Long, like most martial artists, only knew that the Phantom Mountain Range was very dangerous and a forbidden area. And the 100 Flower Valley was one of the most dangerous forbidden areas in the Phantom Mountain Range. The dangers she understood were nothing more than powerful and savage demon beasts, and some treacherous terrains and environments. No one knew that the 100 Flowers Valley was hiding an evil 10,000 skeletal demon, and there was even an ancient demonic lair. This was absolutely shocking news to Granny Long. She had to know the truth and report it to the Luoshui martial god as soon as possible. After all, the Phantom Mountain Range was in the territory of the Black Frost Empire and the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. Ji Tianxing also understood this point, so he explained to Granny Long. Granny Long, this is a long story, so I'll keep it short. The origin of the 100 Flowers Valley was mainly due to the longevity divine pearl, which could release powerful life divine power to nurture flowers, trees, and many other living beings. It was precisely because of this that hundreds of flowers bloomed in the valley, and all of them underwent strange changes. The best of the flowers and trees could even evolve into powerful demons that ruled over the entire 100 Flower Valley. Many adventurers of various races, as well as many ferocious beasts, had rashly entered 100 Flower Valley, only to be killed by the flower demons and the deadly poison. Over the past 1,000 years, the Flower Valley had accumulated tens of thousands of corpses, forming the 10,000 skeletal demon. The demonic chi in the Flower Valley was too heavy, causing the flowers to mutate and become extremely poisonous. This made the 100 Flowers Valley even more dangerous, and those who entered would most likely die. As for why there's a demon's den and an imprisoned blood skeleton in the depths of the 100 Flowers Valley, that's unknown. Granny Long nodded slightly and said with a grave expression, Yes, your analysis is very reasonable, but the only suspicious point is the underground demon's den and the blood skeleton. I know that in the northernmost part of the Divine Kingdom, there's a forbidden death zone called the North Underworld Mountain. That's the territory of the ghost race, and almost no one has set foot there for 10,000 years, so no one knows what's going on there. The 10,000 skeletal demon and the blood skeleton you mentioned should be the ghost race. The Divine Master has always hated the ghost race very much, and once he discovered them sneaking into the Divine Kingdom, he would kill them without mercy. It's just that I didn't expect that there would be a ghost race powerhouse hidden in the 100 Flowers Valley, and a demon's den. It's been 1,000 years, and no one has noticed this. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a low voice, Granny Long, Yun Yao and I were able to escape because of the blood skeleton. The blood skeleton was imprisoned in the demon's den, chained to a white bone thrown by bronze chains. It could understand my words, and it didn't have any ill intentions towards us. It even helped us escape. I think this matter is very strange, and the blood skeleton's identity is very suspicious. It's worth investigating further. If we can figure out the blood skeleton's true identity, we might be able to understand why there's a demon's den hidden in the depths of the 100 Flowers Valley. Granny Long nodded in agreement and asked, Tianqing, think carefully. Did the blood skeleton have any obvious characteristics? Or did it leave behind any clues? Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out the blood-red crystal from his spatial ring and handed it to Granny Long. Before we escaped from the demon's den, the blood skeleton gave me this crystal, as if it wanted to tell me something. Unfortunately, it couldn't speak or communicate with us through divine will, so we couldn't guess its intentions. Also, I carefully examined this crystal. Other than the terrifying blood energy and demonic power it contains, there's nothing special about it. Granny Long reached out and took the blood-red crystal. She held it in her palm and carefully examined it. This crystal doesn't seem to have anything special about it, and it's hard to find any clues. However, since the blood skeleton gave it to you, it must have its own reasons for doing so. Perhaps it's because our strength and knowledge are too shallow that we can't see through its secrets. As she spoke, Granny Long solemnly put away the crystal and said, Tianqing, you don't have to worry about this matter. I'll send this crystal to the Divine Kingdom and present it to the Divine Master. I'll also report the matter of the 100 Flowers Valley to the Divine Master. I believe that with the Divine Master's wisdom and methods, he'll definitely be able to give us an answer. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a gratified expression, I was thinking the same thing. Thank you for your trouble, Granny Long. All right, I'll take a trip to the Divine Kingdom. You should also go into seclusion to heal your injuries. Granny Long waved her hand and turned to leave the room. After Granny Long left, Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment before entering the secret chamber. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing had been in seclusion in the secret chamber for 5 whole days, and his injuries and magic power had both recovered. After he finished his cultivation, he walked out of the secret chamber. Yun Yao was still in seclusion, busy refining the longevity god bead. She had yet to show herself. Ji Tianqing estimated that she would be in seclusion for at least 3 to 5 months. Granny Long was also not on Luotian Mountain. It was obvious that she had gone to the Divine Kingdom and had yet to return. Ji Tianqing waited in Cloudwater Palace for an entire day, but there was still no news from Granny Long. He simply returned to the secret chamber and continued to cultivate. He had already reached the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm, and after the battle in the 100 Flowers Valley, he had consolidated his martial path and had a more solid foundation. He continued to comprehend the 4th level of Sword Soul's path and continued to cultivate in seclusion to increase his strength. He wanted to reach the peak of the 9th level of the primordial spirit realm as soon as possible, so that he could prepare to break through to the tribulation realm. His various encounters and experiences had made him realize a problem. A primordial spirit realm cultivator was not considered a powerhouse on the Xinwu continent. Chapter 1715. For an entire month, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion. There were sufficient cultivation resources prepared in the chamber. The heaven and earth spiritual energies were extremely rich, allowing him to cultivate with half the effort. After a month of arduous cultivation, his insights into the fourth level of the Sword Soul Tao became deeper and more thorough. Even though his strength realm did not increase, and was still at the ninth firmament essence soul realm, he was still a distance away from the perfected realm. However, he gradually comprehended sword intent, a sword intent that was unique to him. His essence soul golden sword had also undergone a subtle change. The resplendent golden sword surface was surrounded by a faint white light. Back when he was still in the Tianxian continent, Burial of Heaven had told him that to become a sword legend like Kenshin, it was not enough to be strong and have exquisite sword techniques. He had to comprehend a sword intent that belonged to him and fuse his will with his sword Tao. Only then could he reach the realm where his sword moved according to his heart, and his words became law. For a sword legend like Kenshin, every slash of his sword was the will of heaven. It was like the laws of heaven and earth, making all people submit to him. Even gods could not resist him. Ji Tianxing still had a long way to go to reach that level. However, he had already taken the first step by comprehending sword intent. Ji Tianxing was filled with anticipation. He looked forward to condensing sword intent and fusing it perfectly into his sword Tao. When that happened, his combat strength would definitely increase exponentially, allowing him to crush any opponent at the same realm. After ending his seclusion, Ji Tianxing left the chamber. He headed to Yun Yao's chamber to check on Yun Yao's cultivation situation. However, the chamber was empty. Yun Yao was not in the chamber. He hurriedly found Black Eagle and asked about Yun Yao's whereabouts. Only then did Black Eagle tell him that Yun Yao had already exited seclusion 2 days ago. Early this morning, a guard came to inform Yun Yao to head to the assembly hall. Granny Long had important matters to discuss. Upon learning of this news, Ji Tianxing hurriedly left Cloud Water Palace and rushed to the assembly hall. The great meeting hall was located in the center of the Luotian mountain. It was a majestic palace with a radius of 300 meters. There was a huge square outside the palace, and there were many guards guarding it. Usually, when the Luotian mountain held important festivals, sacrifices and ceremonies, it would be held in the plaza outside the main hall. Ji Tianxing passed through a group of palaces, crossed the vast square in front of the palace, and arrived at the conference hall. As soon as he entered the grand hall, he heard the voices of Granny Long and a few divine envoys. They were discussing something important. The dazzling hall was brightly lit, and not a speck of dust could be seen anywhere. 6 thick and sturdy golden pillars with dragon carvings supported the dome of the main hall. The dome was inlaid with tens of thousands of gems, forming a vast star map that emitted a dazzling light. In the north of the hall, there was a 30-zhang tall, lifelike statue of the Luoshui martial god carved on the wall. Below the statue was a high platform, and in the middle of the platform was a luxurious throne. Granny Dragon, who had a head full of Dharma protectors, was sitting upright on the throne. She had a dignified look on her face as she pondered something. In the hall, there were 8 experts standing on both sides of the hall. 7 of them were white-haired elders or middle-aged men and women with dignified bearings. The 7 of them had the strength of a tribulation transcendence realm expert, and they were famous experts. They were the 7 divine envoys of the Luotian mountain. There was also a beautiful young woman dressed in a moon-white dress. She was none other than Yun Yao. When Ji Tianxing entered the hall, everyone immediately stopped their discussion and turned to look at him. Granny Long also looked up at him and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, you're already out of seclusion? You came at the right time. I was just discussing that matter with everyone." Ji Tianxing walked to the middle of the hall and stood still. He bowed to Granny Long and the 7 divine envoys and greeted everyone. Then, his gaze landed on Yun Yao as he sized her up. Yun Yao had clearly refined the longevity divine pearl. Her complexion was excellent, and her aura was very stable and powerful. Moreover, her strength had increased by leaps and bounds. She had reached the peak of the 9th level of the essence soul realm. Ji Tianxing could also clearly sense that her body was filled with boundless life divine power. She was like a moving divine object and treasure. He secretly sent a voice transmission to ask about Yun Yao's situation. After exchanging a few words, he talked to Granny Long about serious matters. Granny Long, since you gathered everyone here today, is it because of the matter in the 100 Flowers Valley? Granny Long nodded slightly and said, That's right. I have personally sent the crystal you gave me to the Divine Nation and presented it to the Divine Master. The Divine Master spent a day and a night to determine the true identity of the blood skull through the blood-colored crystal. The crystal is in the Divine Master's hands. I returned to the Luotian Mountain 3 days ago and gathered everyone here to discuss this matter. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked expectantly, Granny Long, the Divine Master already knows the true identity of the blood skull? Of course. Granny Long nodded and said, The Divine Master is erudite and knowledgeable. There is nothing in this world that she doesn't know. Ji Tianxing quickly asked, Who is the blood skull? Granny Long looked at him solemnly and said in a low voice, As for its identity, we have to start from 1,000 years ago. Back then, the Divine Master had a group of Iron Blood Guards called the Blood Rose. There were only 100 people in that group. They were all elite experts and all of them were women. They were extremely loyal to the Divine Master and had always protected the Divine Nation. They carried out all kinds of secret missions for the Divine Master and cleared all obstacles. Granny Long said slowly, her voice low and solemn. Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed something, but he listened silently and did not interrupt. Granny Long sighed and continued. The captain of the Blood Rose was called Yue. She was the Divine Master's most trusted and most valued right-hand woman. Back then, Yue's strength had reached the peak of the 9th level of the Tribulation Passing Realm. She was only one step away from becoming a martial sage. Her husband was the Divine Emperor of the Heaven's Wall Kingdom, the bravest and most battle-hardened Emperor Tianwu. Emperor Tianwu was an orphan and grew up in the Luotian Mountain. He grew up from a servant to a divine disciple, and finally became a great emperor. He was extremely loyal to the Divine Master. After establishing the Heaven's Wall Kingdom, he guarded the northern border of the Divine Nation and swore to fight the Ghost Clan in the North Underworld Mountain. Yue was also loyal. In order to serve the Divine Master, she was willing to give up the position of the Divine Empress of the Heaven's Wall Kingdom and become the captain of the Blood Rose. However, in the Great War 1,000 years ago, Emperor Tianwu led his army into the North Underworld Mountain. He was besieged by 3 great demon saints and died. Yue was heartbroken when she heard the news. In grief and anger, she led dozens of guards to the North Underworld Mountain to kill the Ghost Clan and avenge Emperor Tianwu. Unfortunately, the North Underworld Mountain was too dangerous. The Ghost Clan was too strong, and dozens of guards died in the battle. Chapter 1716. Granny Long's story made everyone's hearts heavy. The hall was silent, and it was suffused with an atmosphere of grief, indignation and pain. That incident 1,000 years ago was the shame of the Luoshui Kingdom, and no one knew about it. Ji Tianxing was confused. Even the Tianwu Emperor had died in the North Underworld Mountain. How could Yue, who was not even a martial sage, dare to attack the North Underworld Mountain? But he thought about it and remembered that the Tianwu Emperor was Yue's husband. It was understandable that Yue could not bear the pain of losing her husband and rushed to the North Underworld Mountain in anger. If one day he fought with the Ancestor Fiend Celestial and died under the Ancestor Fiend Celestial's blade, Yue would definitely die. Yun Yao would also go crazy and fight with the Ancestor Fiend Celestial. Therefore, he did not interrupt Granny Long and did not ask any questions. Granny Long paused for a moment and her tone became heavier. She continued. After Yue escaped to the kingdom, she knelt outside the Luoshui Palace and repented for 7 days and 7 nights. It was her rashness that killed dozens of elite guards. Although the Divine Master was merciful and did not punish her, she still decided to resign from the position of captain and leave the kingdom. She was injured by the Ghost Clan's secret technique, and her strength was decreasing day by day. Her life force was weakening rapidly, and she did not have long to live. Everyone thought that she would return to the Tianwu Empire and find a way to treat her injuries. But after the Tianwu Emperor died, the Tianwu Empire was in chaos. In just half a year, the Tianwu Emperor's nephew Luozi gained the support of the officials and ascended the throne. He controlled the entire empire. The Tianwu Emperor's relics were burned, and Yu Wei was no longer the divine empress of the empire. She was chased out of the imperial city. In the end, she took the few relics of the Tianwu Emperor and left the Tianwu Empire quietly. Many years later, she entered the Black Frost Empire and lived in seclusion in a forbidden area, waiting for death to come. When she was alive, she worked for the kingdom and served the Divine Master sincerely. She was unable to sleep with her husband and did not have any children. After she died, the Tianwu Emperor turned into ashes, and the husband and wife could not sleep together. This happened 1,000 years ago, and very few people know about it. It's so sad. Sigh. After Granny Long finished telling the story, she sighed with a heavy heart. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao finally understood the Blood Skull's identity and origin. They couldn't help but exchange a complicated look. The hall was silent. Everyone was silent. After a long while, Ji Tianxing said, "So that's how it is. Who would have thought that the blood skeleton was actually the captain of the Divine Master's guards, Yu Wei?" Back then, she had been severely injured by the Ghost Clan's experts and had been subjected to the Ghost Clan's secret technique. Her body now contained a shocking amount of demonic qi. When she left the Tianhou Empire, she knew that her days were numbered. Therefore, she took her husband's belongings and left. She wanted to find a forbidden area where no one would step foot and wait for death to come. Even if she couldn't be buried with Emperor Tianwu, she wanted to be buried with Emperor Tianwu's relics and sleep forever. The 100 Flowers Valley in the depths of the Phantom Mountain Range was nourished by the longevity divine pearl. Hundreds of flowers bloomed. It was definitely a beautiful scene. Therefore, when she stepped into the 100 Flowers Valley, she chose to be buried in the 100 Flowers Valley. At this point, Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He analyzed. If I'm not wrong, the demonic cave we found at the bottom of the 100 Flowers Valley was actually Yu Wei's tomb. The giant stone passageway and the hall were all built according to the layout of a tomb. It was just that they hadn't been completed yet. Yu Wei wanted to be buried at the bottom of the 100 Flowers Valley. However, before she could complete the tomb, something happened and took her life in advance. She also didn't expect that after her death, the shocking amount of demonic qi and the tens of thousands of corpses would fuse and form 10,000 bone demons. The 10,000 bone demons took over her tomb and turned it into a demonic cave. Furthermore, the 10,000 skeletal demon had even built an altar and used an evil secret technique to turn her skeleton into a skeletal demon. Because of that, her corpses became blood skeletons and were imprisoned on the White Bone Throne. She hated the Ghost Clan very much when she was alive. Even after she died and was turned into a blood skeleton, she still refused to submit. Ji Tianxing's analysis made Granny Long and the other divine envoys nod their heads in agreement. Your analysis is right. I think so too. Ji Tianxing's speculation coincides with my thoughts. 1,000 years ago, I was still a child. I didn't expect such a sad thing to happen in my divine kingdom. The Ghost Clan of the North Underworld Mountain is the enemy of our Luoshui divine kingdom. Granny Long also nodded slightly and said to Ji Tianxing, "Tianxing, your analysis is basically correct. The Divine Master also has the same thoughts." Back then, the Divine Master was busy with another important matter and didn't have time to care about Yu Wei. When the Divine Master finished dealing with the important matter, it was already decades later, and Yu Wei had passed away many years ago. The Divine Master has always felt regretful about this matter. He even felt guilty towards Yu Wei and Emperor Tianwu. Therefore, the Divine Master kept the blood crystal with him as a memento. The Divine Master also ordered the Luoshui Mountain to do their best to retrieve Yu Wei's corpse. No matter what, we can't let Yu Wei's corpse be controlled by the Ghost Clan. This is an insult to Yu Wei. The warriors and ancestors who sacrificed themselves for our divine kingdom can't be humiliated like this. The 7 divine envoys nodded in agreement and cursed the ghost clan angrily. Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and said seriously, Granny Long, the safest way is for you to lead everyone to the 100-Flower Valley. We have to destroy the 10,000 skeleton demon and destroy the entire 100-Flower Valley to rescue Yu Wei's corpse. I have a way to purify Yu Wei's corpse and let her rest in peace. She can be properly buried in the Luoshui mountain. Granny Long's eyes were filled with shock. She nodded and said, Can you really purify the ghost clan's ghost clan? If that's the case, that's great. I was just thinking about saving Yu Wei's corpse and burying her on the Luoshui mountain. This way, I can give her some comfort. It's just that I haven't found a way to purify the ghost clan's ghost clan. Ji Tianxing nodded again. He cupped his hands and said, Granny Long, don't worry about the matter of purifying the ghost clan's ghost clan. Just leave it to me. There's no time to lose. Let's leave as soon as possible. It's been more than a month since the incident. I'm afraid that if we're late, something else will happen. Granny Long thought for a moment and ordered, All right, let's leave now. Divine Envoy Du, Divine Envoy Lu, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao. The 4 of you will follow me to the 100-Flower Valley. The other 5 divine envoys, please stay on the Luoshui mountain and take charge of the situation. The divine envoys bowed and expressed their obedience. Not long after, Granny Long left the Luoshui mountain with the 2 divine envoys Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Chapter 1717. It took Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao half a month to reach the 100-Flower Valley. Granny Long's flying boat was extremely fast, several times faster than them. 3 days later, the flying boat entered the Phantom Mountain Range. Under Ji Tianxing's guidance, the flying boat went straight to the 100-Flower Valley. Along the way, many primordial soul realm monsters were alarmed and attacked the flying boat. However, the speed of those demonic beasts was too slow. Before they even rushed to the vicinity of the flying boat, they were shaken off far away. A few hours later, the flying boat arrived at the area where the 100-Flower Valley was located. They were still a few hundred miles away, but when they looked down at the ground in front of them, they saw ruins of a few hundred miles. The 100-Flower Valley, which used to be filled with clouds and flowers, had now become a dark brown wasteland. There was not a trace of green to be seen. The flying boat arrived above the ruins and disappeared in a flash. Swoosh! Granny Long, the 2 divine envoys, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the others immediately appeared in the sky. Everyone spread out and stay alert. Granny Long waved her hand, indicating for everyone to disperse. The 2 divine envoys quickly drew their swords and looked around with keen eyes. Ji Tianxing stared at the ruins on the ground. After observing for a while, his face suddenly changed and he frowned. No need. The demon's den has been destroyed. The blood skull is probably gone too. Everyone was shocked and looked down at the ground. There was a deep pit on the ground that was 100 miles wide. It was like an abyss. The pit was roughly 50 miles deep, and the bottom of the pit was dim. Moreover, the soil in the pit was as black as charcoal, and there were pieces of gravel scattered among the piles of soil and ruins. The terrain around the edge of the pit was also spread out like a bowl. Granny Long and the 2 divine envoys had rich combat experience, so they knew at a glance that it was caused by an explosion in the depths of the pit. The shockwave that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth spread out in all directions, creating a huge crater with a radius of 100 miles. Now the deep pit was as black as charcoal and filled with rich demonic qi. Granny Long looked at the crater, then turned to Ji Tianxing. With a serious expression she asked, Tianxing, is this where the demon's den is? That's right. Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a complicated tone. 50 miles deep underground, the area with a radius of tens of miles has been destroyed by the Great War. The stone passageways and halls have all been destroyed and turned into ruins. Divine Emissary Du frowned and thought for a moment, and then asked doubtfully, From the traces of this big pit, the incident has already happened a month ago. A great battle had taken place in this deep pit. It was the battle between 2 Tribulation Transcendence realm experts that caused such a terrifying destructive power. Could it be caused by the battle between the 10,000-bone demon and the blood skull? Yin Yao nodded slightly and said, "At present, it seems very likely, but we still have to go down and investigate to see if we can find any clues." After saying that, she and Ji Tianqing flew to the deep pit and landed at the bottom of it. Granny Long and the two divine emissaries quickly followed and went to the deep pit to check the surrounding ruins. In the dark pit, there were huge pits and gullies everywhere, and countless scorched earth and gravel were scattered everywhere. The scene of devastation before their eyes showed everyone just how frightening the might of that battle was. Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao's eyes were sharp, so they quickly found many broken bones in the scorched earth and ruins. After verification, they found that these bones were the bones of primordial spirit realm martial artists. Some of them belonged to human martial artists, some belonged to demon beasts, and some belonged to foreign martial artists. However, even after searching the entire crater for an hour, they still couldn't find anything that had anything to do with the blood skull. They couldn't even find a blood-red bone fragment. After an hour, they had no choice but to give up and fly out of the deep pit one after another. Everyone returned to the top of the deep pit and gathered together to discuss the matter. Granny Long said with a solemn expression, "From the current situation, we're too late. As early as a month ago, a great battle took place here and destroyed the entire Devil's Den. Tens of thousands of corpses were destroyed in the battle and turned into bone fragments. Only the 10,000-bone demon and the blood skull didn't leave any fragments or clues. They probably left this place." Divine Emissary Willow frowned and said worriedly, "Granny Long, what should we do next? The Divine Master has given us an order that we must find Yu Wei's remains to complete the task. But this place has been destroyed, and Yu Wei's remains are missing. Where are we going to find them?" Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and Divine Emissary Du all had the same concern, so they looked at Granny Long. Granny Long thought for a while, and then said in a deep voice, "The Ghost Clan wanted to refine Yu Wei's remains into a bone demon and turn her into a blood skull to be controlled by the Ghost Clan. If that's the case, it means that the Ghost Clan has some kind of conspiracy and purpose, so they won't easily destroy Yu Wei's remains. Let's assume that the 10,000-bone demon and the blood skull have both left this place. Then, they must have left traces and alarmed other experts when they left the Phantom Mountain Range and moved around the continent. I plan to send a message to the Black Frost Empire and ask them to cooperate with the Luotian Mountain to investigate the blood skull's whereabouts." Everyone's eyes lit up, and they nodded in agreement. Divine Emissary Du said with a gratified look, "That's a good idea. The Phantom Mountain Range is in the territory of the Black Frost Empire. Now that such a thing has happened in the mountain range, the Black Frost Empire will certainly help us. As long as the Black Frost Empire sends elite experts to investigate the Phantom Mountain Range, they will definitely find some clues." Divine Emissary Willow also agreed. Granny Long then took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to the Black Frost Empire. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and added, "The Black Frost Empire will be responsible for the investigation of the blood skull for the time being. They have more people and more power, so it will be easier for them to find clues. But now we must destroy this place and remove the demonic qi in the earth. Otherwise, the remaining demonic qi and the bone fragments on the ground will likely give birth to another bone demon." "That's true." Granny Long nodded and said with some difficulty, "However, in order to completely remove the demonic qi here, I need everyone to cooperate and set up a few large arrays. It will take at least half a month, and we may not be able to completely remove it." Before she could finish, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "No need to go through so much trouble. Just leave it to me." After saying that, he raised his palms with a solemn expression and tried his best to activate the power of the heaven-mending orb, shooting out a sacred white light that filled the sky. Swoosh! 2 beams of divine white light fell from the sky and covered the deep pit. Chapter 1718. In just an hour, Ji Tianqing had used the power of the heaven-mending orb to purify the entire crater. Not a single trace of demonic energy could be found in the crater that was hundreds of miles wide. Even the skeletons scattered in the ruins were purified by the white light, and their demonic energy and death aura were also purified. However, this was only the beginning and not the end. Apart from the crater, the ruins that were once the 100-Flower Valley was also filled with dense demonic energy. Ji Tianqing patiently used the secret technique and used the power of the heaven-mending orb to gradually purify the demonic energy in the ruins. This process took him an entire 6 hours. His mission was complete. Not a single trace of demonic energy could be found in the ruins that were hundreds of miles wide. Of course, in order to complete this mission, he had used up a lot of energy, and his mind was also exhausted. He slowly stopped and said to Granny Long, "The demonic energy here has been completely purified. There will be no more trouble in the future." Granny Long showed a gratified expression and nodded. "That's good." Yin Yao stared at the ruins for a long time. After a moment of consideration, she shook her head and said, "I'm afraid this is not enough. The surroundings are all mountains and forests. Only this area is full of ruins. It will take at least 100 years for this area to grow into a forest. It just so happens that after my seclusion this time, I grasped the power of the God Orb and obtained a new ability. Let me restore it." As she spoke, she formed a hand seal with both hands and formed a mysterious trajectory. She was using some kind of secret technique. Suddenly, 2 dark green lights gushed out from her palms and fell from the sky onto the ruins. The dense dark green divine light immediately turned into specks of light and drilled into the grayish-brown earth. Then a shocking scene appeared. Dense green sprouts emerged from the barren and withered earth and quickly grew like bamboo shoots after a rain. The healthy green sprouts rose from the ground at a speed visible to the naked eye and turned into small trees. Many sprouts quickly grew and turned into flowers and plants, blooming with beautiful purple and red flowers. In just a short 15 minutes, the wasteland that was dozens of miles wide was covered by grass, trees, and flowers. Yun Yao continued to channel the dark green divine light, causing the grass and trees to quickly expand in all directions. The dense flowers and trees also grew crazily from 2 to 3 meters tall to more than 10 meters, and then to dozens of meters tall. Ji Tianqing, Granny Long, and the 2 gods' envoys witnessed this scene with their own eyes, and were full of shock and astonishment. No one expected Yin Yao to have mastered such a miraculous secret technique and divine power. The dark green divine light that she shot out created millions of flowers and trees at a heaven-defying speed. This was not just creating things. She could even control the growth of thousands of flowers and trees and plants. Such a miraculous method was not much different from that of the gods in the ancient legends. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. The dense forest spread. The ruins and trees of trees, and trees of earth. Towering trees stood in the middle of the forest. Each of them was at least 100 meters tall and had luxuriant foliage. As far as the eye could see, the newly sprouted 500 miles of forest was no different from the surrounding forest. Those who did not know would never think that this was the former 100-Flower Valley. 4 hours later, Yin Yao stopped. She did not feel tired or slack after casting for 4 hours. Her expression was as calm as usual. Granny Long looked at her with shining eyes, and a gratified expression appeared on her face. She nodded and said, "That's great. Yin Yao, you have mastered such a powerful divine power. Not only can you accelerate the growth of thousands of trees, but you can also control flowers and trees. This is definitely a miraculous ability." A gratified smile appeared on Ji Tianqing's face as he added, "The effect and power of the longevity divine pearl far exceeded our imagination. Yao Yao can not only accelerate the growth of flowers and trees, she also has incredible vitality. She can heal the wounded and heal the dying." Yin Yao nodded and said, "Tianqing is right. The divine pearl I obtained in the 100-Flower Valley is called the longevity divine pearl. The longevity divine power contained in the divine pearl is effective for all living things." Granny Long nodded and said with a smile, "That's great. Yin Yao, you have such an amazing harvest. All the dangers you went through before were worth it." The 100-Flower Valley no longer exists, and we have lost track of the Blood Skull. It's time for us to leave. Then, Granny Long took out the airship and led everyone to board it. They flew toward the outskirts of the Mirage Mountains. About 4 hours later, the airship was flying above the vast mountains. The sky ahead was covered with large gray clouds, and the light was very dim. Such a scene was very common in the Mirage Mountains. Many areas were shrouded in dense fog and clouds, looking gloomy, oppressive and frightening. Granny Long did not care too much. She drove the airship into the clouds and was about to pass through this area. However, not long after the airship entered the clouds, an overwhelming amount of black light gushed out from all directions and drowned the airship. Every black light was a ghost bat that was completely black and exuded the cold air of death. They were as big as a water tank, with sharp fangs and scarlet eyes. They looked extremely hideous. Granny Long had just seen those ghost bats. Before she could react, thousands of ghost bats crashed into the airship and self-destructed. Boom, 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 boom. The deafening sound exploded in the sky and shook the area hundreds of miles away. Thousands of ghost bats self-destructed and turned into dust on the spot, releasing endless black light that drowned the airship like fire. How could the dark silver airship withstand such a strong and sudden attack? With a series of cracking sounds, cracks appeared on the flying boat, and countless pieces of debris flew out of it. In the sea of fire, the flying boat quickly disintegrated, becoming fragmented and scattered in all directions. Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the 2 gods' messengers were thrown out of the debris and flew in all directions. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were fine. They knew the dangers of the Mirage Mountains and had been vigilant. When the airship was attacked, the 2 of them used their secret techniques to protect themselves. Even though they were thrown out, they only suffered minor injuries. Moreover, the 2 of them quickly gathered together after flying for 40 miles. The 2 gods' messengers were in a worse state. When the airship was attacked, the 2 of them were meditating in the room. The airship suddenly collapsed, and the 2 of them were caught off guard. They were immediately hit by their own power, and were severely injured. Chapter 17:19. Boom! Boom! The 2 messengers crashed into the forest almost at the same time, creating a loud, dull sound. The 1,000-feet-tall mountain shook violently, and a huge crack appeared, extending from the peak to the foot of the mountain. Dust and wood chips were blown up into the sky by the airwaves. The 2 messengers looked miserable. They were covered in mud and blood, and their breathing was chaotic as they fell into the deep pit. After a while, they climbed out of the pit and flew up into the sky shakily. However, just as they flew into the sky, before they could see their surroundings, they were drowned by the overwhelming black light. At least 5,000 ghost bats pounced on the 2 of them in a frenzy, besieging them. Although the individual ghost bats were not strong, only around the 1st or 2nd level of the primordial soul realm. However, when thousands of ghost bats gathered together, their destructive power was strong enough to destroy heaven and earth. Even a tribulation realm powerhouse could not withstand it. All the ghost bats seemed to have gone crazy, and they attacked without fear of death. They released the cold air of death and attacked the 2 messengers. Swoosh! 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 Tens of thousands of cold air of death were like sharp black blades crazily attacking. The ghost bats rushed to the 2 messengers and attacked them with their sharp claws and fangs. Bang! 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 Dull, loud sounds kept exploding, echoing in the sky. The 2 messengers were beaten to a pulp, and their magical power shields kept cracking. Soon more wounds appeared on their bodies. They were already heavily injured, and now they were surrounded by 5,000 ghost bats. They were in a very dangerous situation. Even when they calmed down, they attacked in an orderly manner, using their secret techniques to kill countless ghost bats. However, a shocking and frightening scene appeared. The ghost bats that had been blasted into pieces turned into pieces of black light, and quickly gathered together to form more ghost bats. These ghost bats were immortal, and they could not be killed completely. The newly born ghost bats were even more ferocious, and they attacked recklessly. The 2 messengers were terrified, and their hearts were filled with helplessness and anger. They fought back with all their might, using all kinds of powerful secret techniques to kill the ghost bats and block their attacks. However, they could not break through the ghost bats' encirclement, and they were trapped in the sea of black light, unable to escape. The two divine envoys were in the northwest, besieged by thousands of ghost bats, unable to escape. At the same time, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were being attacked by thousands of ghost bats in the southeast. The two of them were more than 100 miles away from the two god envoys. More than 6,000 ghost bats formed an ocean of black light that covered the sky and the earth, drowning the two of them. The two of them were in the boundless darkness, constantly being attacked by the ghost bats. They were in an extremely dangerous situation. Yun Yao's body lit up with green light, forming an oval-shaped shield to protect herself. She cast a spell with her left hand and held her sword with her right hand. She kept slashing out dazzling sword lights to block the ghost bats that were attacking her from all directions. Even though her swordsmanship was exquisite and her defense was very tight. However, there were simply too many ghost bats surrounding her. Her magic power shield kept shattering and reforming. Very quickly she was injured. Hideous wounds were left all over her body. Dark red blood gushed out and dyed her white dress red. Fortunately, she had mastered the power of immortality. After being injured, she only needed to think to use the power of immortality to quickly heal her injuries. Therefore, she was constantly in a state of being injured and recovering quickly. Her life was not in danger, but she could not break through the ghost bat's encirclement and escape. In the sky 10 miles away from her, Ji Tianqing was also fighting fiercely. He was also in the ocean of black light, surrounded by thousands of ghost bats. He was in a perilous situation. Even though he used his magic power to protect himself and the golden rock's wings. However, there were too many ghost bats, and they were as fast as lightning. It was impossible for him to defend himself. The slightest mistake would allow the ghost bats to take advantage of it and injure him. There were many new wounds on his body, and they were still increasing. Blood gushed out from the wounds and dyed his robe red. He fought back recklessly, using powerful swordsmanship to kill many ghost bats. However, the ghost bats kept reviving and attacking even more ferociously. They trapped him in the ocean of black light, unable to escape. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was furious and anxious. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and struck out with his palm, filling the sky with white light. Bang! A palm formed by white light slammed into the ocean of black light, killing more than 200 ghost bats instantly. Those ghost bats were smashed into pieces, turning into pieces of black light, trying to reform their forms. However, the holy white light immediately purified the black light, turning it into nothingness. The 300 ghost bats were completely dead and could no longer reform. Ji Tianqing was encouraged. He continued to strike out white light and killed more ghost bats. However, at this moment, the thousands of ghost bats suddenly stopped attacking. The ocean of black light stopped for a moment. Then it spun faster and formed a huge black light vortex. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The black light vortex spun rapidly in the sky and exploded with powerful spatial power, tearing the sky apart. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had just realized that something was wrong when they were enveloped by the black light vortex and disappeared from the sky. In the next moment, the black light vortex enveloped them and teleported them 100,000 miles away. Granny Long was above a pile of flying ship wreckage, surrounded by more than 8,000 ghost bats. She was a martial saint expert, an existence that had transcended the mortal world. Ordinary people could not threaten her at all. When the flying ship was destroyed and she was thrown out, she was not injured at all. Even if she was surrounded by 8,000 ghost bats, she could still deal with them calmly. The attacks of those ghost bats could not hurt her at all. However, there were too many ghost bats. She was trapped in the ocean of black light and could not break free for the time being. Even if she used secret techniques to kill batches of ghost bats, they would never die. However, those ghost bats were indestructible. They kept gathering and being reborn. It was impossible to kill them all. Granny Long was very anxious. She was worried about Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing's safety. She only wanted to break free and save them as soon as possible. However, those ghost bats kept pestering her, forming a huge cage of black light and sealing her inside. The ghost bats raised by the ghost race. I didn't expect the ghost race of the North Underworld Mountain to be so arrogant. They dare to use ghost bats to attack the people of the Luotian Mountain. After dozens of breaths, Granny Long figured out the characteristics of the ghost bats and immediately thought of a way to deal with them. She formed hand seals with both hands and chanted a mysterious incantation. She used a secret technique. Suddenly, the black clouds in the sky rolled and condensed into dozens of lightning pillars as thick as water tanks. Kaboom! As Granny Long waved her hands, more than 30 lightning pillars fell from the sky and blasted into the ocean of black light. Thousands of ghost bats were hit by the lightning pillars and shattered into pieces by the purple lightning arcs, scattering in the sky. Chapter 1720. Pieces of black light scattered in the sky, fluttering and slowly gathering together. The sacred and violent power of lightning had an obvious restraining effect on the ghost bats. Although the lightning could not directly kill the ghost bats, it could severely injure them, preventing them from recovering their strength quickly and making it difficult for them to gather again. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Granny Long's figure flashed and broke out of the encirclement, flying to the sky 15 kilometers away. She stood in the clouds and released a powerful divine sense, extending it in all directions. Her divine sense enveloped an area of 200 miles, and she knew the situation like the back of her hand. She could clearly detect that Divine Emissary Du and Divine Emissary Lu were being attacked by thousands of ghost bats in the sky 50 kilometers away. Although the two of them were covered in wounds and looked miserable, their lives were not in danger. However, their lives were not in danger for the time being, and they could still resist the attacks of the ghost bats. However, Granny Long was most worried about Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing. Her divine sense scanned an area of 200 miles, but she could not find any trace of the two. That's strange. Where are Yun Yao and Tianxing? With their strength and means, they won't die even if the flying boat is destroyed. Granny Long frowned and murmured worriedly. She flew quickly in the sky, releasing her divine sense to search every inch of the area. 30 seconds later, she had searched the entire area, but she still could not find Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. However, she could detect that Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing's aura remained in the sky, and there were some clues. Granny Long analyzed for a moment with these clues, and came to a conclusion. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were not killed by the ghost bats. They must have been abducted by the ghost bats. Granny Long quickly took out an ancient bronze compass, and used a secret technique to detect Yun Yao's location and traces. In the depths of a certain mountain range in the Mirage Mountain Range, there was a dark and gloomy cave hidden in the underground rock layer, and it was filled with cold and bloody demonic chi. The entrance of the cave was guarded by two huge demonic beasts. The two demonic beasts had strength at the seventh firmament essence soul realm. They had ferocious appearances, and their bodies were purplish-black with hints of red. They exuded an intense bloodlust. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a spacious cave with a radius of several hundred feet. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with a few scattered moonstones, emitting a soft silver light, bringing a trace of gloomy light to the cave. Two figures, one tall and one short, were standing in the cave, talking in low voices. The leader was a brawny man in black armor, who was more than 2 meters tall, and had a body as sturdy as an iron tower. This person's skin was dark and purple, and his entire body was covered with thick hair. He wore a cold black armor and a scarlet cape. His broad face was dark purple in color, and his facial features were squarish. He was different from ordinary people. His thick eyebrows and large eyes had a pair of dark purple pupils that flickered with frightening ferocity. Without a doubt, this black-armored man was a devil race powerhouse. His strength had reached the peak of the Crossing Calamity realm, and he was not far from the Martial Sage realm. The short one standing beside him was a bald child, who was 1 meter tall, and covered in ghostly tattoos. It was Ghost Boy. Previously, in the ruins of Deity, His physical body had been destroyed by Ji Tianxing, and he had escaped with only a primordial spirit. At that moment, he had reformed his physical body, and it was exactly the same as before. However, if one took a closer look, one would realize that his physical body was still slightly damaged, and his strength was slightly weak. Obviously, he had not recovered his primordial spirit, and his strength had dropped significantly. It would take a few more decades for him to return to normal. Demon King Xiaoyi, are you confident in this mission? You should know that Ji Tianxing is not easy to deal with. He has Granny Long of Luotian Mountain with him. Granny Long is a martial sage. If our plan fails, not only will we not be able to complete the mission, but we may also be in danger. Ghost Boy looked at the black-armored man beside him and said in a serious tone. The black-armored man, who was called Demon King Xiaoyi, curled his lips in disdain and revealed a contemptuous smile. Ghost Boy, you have met Ji Tianxing twice before, and you have not been able to kill him. You were even severely injured by him. I think you are scared out of your wits, right? You are actually afraid of an Essence Soul Realm worm? Ghost Boy frowned and suppressed his shame and anger. He said in a deep voice, Xiaoyi, Ji Tianxing has the Kenshin bloodline. You must not underestimate him. Moreover, I am most worried about Granny Long. She is a martial sage after all. Xiaoyi shook the scarlet cloak on his back and said with a sneer, as the third demon lord, do you think that I would be as stupid as you when doing things? My 30,000 ghost bats will definitely be able to hold back Granny Long and the two divine envoys and capture Ji Tianxing. Anyway, our target is Ji Tianxing. As long as we complete the mission before Granny Long arrives, we will have succeeded. Ghost Boy nodded and said, since you are so confident, that is for the best. However, you must remember that we are in the territory of Luoshui Divine Kingdom. We must end the battle quickly in order to escape unscathed. Demon King Xiaoyi only grinned and did not say anything. His expression was arrogant and confident. At that moment, a gust of wind suddenly blew in the empty and dark cave. Swoosh! A huge black vortex appeared out of thin air in the cave and spun rapidly. Here it comes. Demon King Xiaoyi raised his eyebrows and sneered when he saw the black vortex. He waved his hand and shot out a black light. He used a secret technique to dispel the black vortex. Swoosh! Swoosh! The huge black vortex quickly disintegrated into thousands of ghost bats and flew toward Demon King Xiaoyi like a flock of birds returning to the forest. In the blink of an eye, the thousands of ghost bats shrunk and turned into black lights the size of fingernails. They entered Demon King Xiaoyi's body. On the scarlet cloak draped over his shoulders, a dense pattern of black birds immediately appeared. After the black light dissipated, two figures fell from the sky and crashed into the ground of the cave. The two figures were a man and a woman. The man was handsome and heroic, while the woman was cold and holy. They were Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao. Demon King Xiaoyi waved his hands and shot out hundreds of black lights toward the two of them. Swoosh! 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 In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of black lights tied up Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao like ropes. Their spiritual energy and primordial spirits were restrained. They could not move like puppets and were suspended in the middle of the cave. However, the two of them glared angrily at Demon King Xiaoyi and Ghost Child. Seeing that Ghost Child was also present, Ji Tianxing was furious and cursed. Ghost Child, it's you disgusting monster. Last time in the ruins of God, I destroyed your physical body with my own hands. But you were lucky enough to escape. I didn't expect that a monster like you would dare to come to the Luoshui Divine Kingdom and behave so atrociously. You're asking for death. Ghost Child glared at Ji Tianxing with cold resentment in his eyes. He sneered and said, let's see where you can run to this time, Ji Tianxing. You're dead for sure. Devil King Owl Knight walked up to Ji Tianxing and sized him up. Then, he sneered and said with a sarcastic tone, I thought that the person who could defeat Ghost Boy twice and severely injure him must be an incredible expert. Chapter 1721. Demon King Xiaoyi's tone was full of contempt and sarcasm. The way he sized up Ji Tianxing was also like he was looking at an ant. Ji Tianqing was furious, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ghost Child was also furious, but he didn't dare to do anything to Demon King Xiaoyi, so he could only hold it in. Demon King Xiaoyi, Ji Tianqing isn't an ordinary person. You can't let your guard down. Demon King Xiaoyi didn't take his words to heart at all, and his lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. This monarch can crush this kind of ant-like character to death with a single finger. Demon King Xiaoyi stretched out his broad right hand as he spoke. His palm was filled with dense black light as he grabbed at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was bound by the black light rope and couldn't move at all, let alone resist. Strands of black light of death drilled into his chest and immediately began to spread. The skin and flesh on his chest were corroded by the black light of death and turned into black ashes, scattering on the ground. His flesh and bones were corroded bit by bit, making sizzling sounds. In the blink of an eye, a bowl-sized bloody hole appeared in Ji Tianqing's chest, revealing the pale golden bones inside. Ji Tianqing was in so much pain that he wanted to die. His body twitched violently, and his face was distorted. However, he clenched his teeth and only let out a few painful groans. He didn't scream or beg for mercy. Demon King Xiaoyi saw that he was so stubborn and sneered. "Ha ha ha, you can endure it so well? I have a whole new level of respect for your endurance and determination. You little worm, you're indeed qualified for me to deal with you personally." Then, the black light in his palm became denser, and its power doubled. Along with a light sizzling noise, Ji Tianqing's skin and flesh started to fester and corrode, turning into a large cloud of black ashes. The pain doubled, and Ji Tianqing's body twitched. His nerves were twisted and numb. Yin Yao watched Ji Tianqing being tortured from the side. She was angry and distressed, and her eyes were filled with killing intent. However, she was restrained and couldn't move. She couldn't even open her mouth to speak or make a sound. She could only watch Ji Tianqing being tortured. She was so angry that her eyes almost popped out, but there was nothing she could do. Ghost Child saw this and couldn't help but frown. He reminded Demon King Xiaoyi. "Demon King Xiaoyi, since Ji Tianqing is an ant in your eyes, it's meaningless for you to torture him. We're short on time. Don't forget our mission. If this drags on for too long, when Granny Long arrives, all our efforts will be in vain." Demon King Owl Knight's hand paused for a moment, and he answered without turning his head. "Ghost Child, don't forget who you are. Not only did you fail to capture Ji Tianqing, you were also heavily injured by him and lost your physical body. And you. Right now, you are a criminal, and this monarch is the executor of this operation. I'm the one who decides what to do. You're just a guide." Not only did Demon King Xiaoyi look down on Ji Tianqing, but he also looked down on Ghost Child. Of course, he was just saying that to show off his status. In fact, he knew that time was of the essence, and he had to complete the mission as soon as possible. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing and ordered, "Little worm, I'll give you one chance. Hand over the Kenshin bloodline, and I'll give you a quick death." Ji Tianqing was in so much pain that he was covered in cold sweat. The veins on his forehead were popping, and his face was twisted. He slowly raised his head and stared coldly at Demon King Xiaoyi. He said word by word, "Idiot. Heart. Arrogant. Want. Damn demon, one day, I'll turn you into ashes." "Ha ha ha ha." Demon King Xiaoyi laughed wantonly and said cruelly, "Since you're so stubborn, I'll take it myself." As he spoke, his thick and sturdy right hand passed through the bloody hole in Ji Tianqing's chest and reached into his chest. He grabbed Ji Tianqing's heart, and a black light burst out of his palm, wildly devouring the blood in the heart. That was Ji Tianqing's blood essence, the purest bloodline. The black light pierced his heart and quickly absorbed the pale golden blood, which flowed into Demon King Xiaoyi's right palm. The boiling pale golden blood contained a sacred and majestic aura, and it emitted an extremely powerful energy wave. Ji Tianqing was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Demon King Xiaoyi sneered maliciously, enjoying the pleasure of torturing someone. However, just as his right palm touched the pale golden Kenshin bloodline, he felt a heart-wrenching pain. Tisk tsk tisk. There was a soft sound. Half of his thick and strong right palm had been corroded by the Kenshin bloodline, and his flesh and finger bones had disappeared. Even the powerful demonic power in his palm had been purified by the Qinshin bloodline. The extreme pain made Demon King Xiaoyi retract his right hand at lightning speed, and he cried out in pain with a twisted face. "No, this is impossible." His body trembled in pain, and he lowered his head in shock, looking at his right palm in disbelief. He saw that the area contaminated by the Qinshin bloodline had all disappeared. The wound was as black as charcoal, and black smoke was rising in spirals, giving off a strong burnt smell. The few drops of golden Qinshin blood also quickly returned to Ji Tianxing's heart. Demon King Xiaoyi stared at Ji Tianxing ferociously and sneered. "Ha ha ha. You're really something, you little worm. No wonder Ghost Boy was defeated by you time and time again. And you caused him to be so miserable. I didn't expect the Qinshin bloodline to be so powerful after being nurtured by you. It has already recovered some of its divinity." The gods above the 9 heavens had always been sacred and inviolable. Even if it was just a drop of God's blood, it was sacred and inviolable. Demon King Xiaoye's expression changed, and he had no choice but to stop underestimating Ji Tianxing and treat him with caution. When Ghost Child saw that Devil Monarch Night Owl was burned by Sword God's blood, he secretly rejoiced in his misfortune. With a playful tone he said, "I just reminded you not to underestimate Ji Tianxing." Demon King Xiaoye's lips curled into a cold smile, and he nodded slightly. "This little worm is quite capable, but that's all. There's no mission that I can't complete." Then a black light flashed in his left palm, and a black beetle appeared. This black and cold beetle was only the size of a walnut, and its entire body was covered in a cold and hard shell. It also had a dozen sharp claws. There were 3 dark red blood lines on the back of the beetle, and it emitted an extremely powerful demonic aura, which was especially terrifying. When Ghost Boy saw the beetle's appearance, he was shocked and exclaimed in disbelief, "Shura heart-devouring bug. This is the top demonic creature of my clan, and it hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. How did you get one?" Demon King Xiaoyi sneered. "My status and methods are not something that a low-level demon king like you can imagine. You don't have to ask about the origin of the Shura heart-devouring bug. I want to use this bug to seize Ji Tianxing's Qinshin bloodline and devour his heart and soul." Chapter 1722. The black and cold Shura heart-devouring bug quickly burrowed into Ji Tianxing's body and started to absorb the Qinshin bloodline. The light golden god's blood had a sacred aura and power that could burn Demon King Xiaoyi. However, the Shura heart-devouring bug's body was very special. It specialized in devouring the organs, bloodline, and souls of powerhouses. It burrowed into Ji Tianxing's heart and desperately absorbed the Qinshin bloodline. When the golden god's blood touched it, it felt extremely painful and irritable. Its body kept trembling. However, it was not corroded into ashes by the god's blood. It could actually resist the power of the god's blood. A piercing pain spread throughout Ji Tianxing's body, causing him to tremble violently. Cold sweat poured down like rain. His face was as pale as paper. His face was also distorted, and he kept groaning in pain. This was a true heart-devouring pain. Yun Yao was extremely anxious and angry. Her body was also trembling, and tears immediately flowed out of her eyes. She also felt the pain and torture Ji Tianxing was going through. She wanted nothing more than to tear Demon King Xiaoyi into pieces and kill him. However, the black rope kept tightening and binding her tightly. It sealed her magic power and soul, making it impossible for her to resist or save Ji Tianxing. Demon King Xiaoyi laughed excitedly when he saw Ji Tianxing's incomparable pain. "Ha ha ha. Little worm, weren't you very stubborn just now? Now that you know what I'm capable of, have you tasted the feeling of living a life worse than death? But don't worry, the pain will end soon. In at most an hour, the Shura heart-devouring bug will devour your heart and take your Qinshin bloodline. Then you'll be a lowly life, and you can die in pain." Demon King Xiaoyi looked down at Ji Tianxing with a cold smile. His eyes were extremely cruel and bloodthirsty. Ghost Child also stared coldly at Ji Tianxing. A carefree look flashed past his eyes. He felt that his hatred had been vented. Ji Tianxing had caused him to be in such a miserable state. He had lost all face and suffered the contempt and mockery of the other demon kings. Even if he did not kill Ji Tianqing with his own hands, being able to see Ji Tianqing die in pain was also a form of comfort for him. Time passed quietly. In the dimly lit cave, a thick smell of blood filled the air. It was filled with pain and cruelty. Ji Tianqing was tormented. His entire body was distorted, and his will was on the verge of collapse. A quarter of an hour passed. His heart had been bitten into several holes, and blood was gushing out from them. He was already on the verge of death, and was on the verge of losing consciousness. The Shura heart-devouring bug had devouring bug's bloodline had devouring blood. At this moment, the cave's blood Demon King King Xiao and Demon King Xiao Yi. His demon, S. B blood demons Demon King Xiao Yi and Ghost Child's bodies trembled. Their expressions changed. With their strength and knowledge, they could naturally tell that the two guards guarding the entrance of the Devil's Den had been killed. The raging energy was the shockwave from the battle. Both of them released their invisible divine senses and extended it toward the cave's entrance. In the next moment, both of them frowned. Their eyes turned serious. It's a white-haired old woman. She must be Luotian Mountain's Granny Long, Ghost Child said in a low voice. His eyes were filled with fear. Demon King Xiao Yi also put away his arrogance. He frowned and muttered, "That damned old woman. Even if she's a martial saint, she can't escape from the ghost bats so quickly. She only took half an hour to find this place. How is that possible?" He was very confident in the ghost bats. He was sure that the thousands of ghost bats could delay Granny Long for at least an hour. By the time Granny Long got rid of the ghost bats, even if she found Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, it would take her 4 hours to get here. After all, the two places were 100,000 miles apart. By the time Granny Long got here, it would be too late. He had already taken the Kenshin bloodline and killed Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. In this way, he would have succeeded and would not have to meet Granny Long. However, his plan, which he thought was perfect, was ruined just like that. He had calculated everything, but he did not expect Granny Long to find this place so quickly. After a moment of silence, Demon King Xiao Yi ordered Ghost Child, "Let's go. Follow me to meet that old woman." "So what if she's a martial saint?" "I'm also a half-step martial saint. I've long wanted to challenge a real martial saint." As he spoke, he waved his wide scarlet cloak and strode toward the cave's entrance. Ghost Child hesitated for a moment. He pointed at Ji Tianqing and said, "Demon King Xiao Yi, you go and stop Granny Long. Just delay her for 45 minutes. I'll stay here to guard Ji Tianqing in case something happens and our plan fails." Demon King Xiao Yi turned his head and looked at him with disdain. He sneered and said, "Ghost Child, you're so afraid of death? You don't deserve to be the Demon King of my clan." Ghost Child's expression changed immediately. He quickly waved his hand and explained, "You've misunderstood. I'm not afraid of Granny Long. I just don't want anything to go wrong with the plan. Ji Tianqing is very cunning." "Shut up." Demon King Xiao Yi shouted angrily. "Don't try to explain. Ji Tianqing is already imprisoned by my death chain. His heart is almost eaten by the heart-devouring worms. He only has one breath left and is about to die. What accident can happen? If you're afraid, you can leave now. I'm ashamed to be with you." Since Demon King Xiao Yi had said such harsh words, Ghost Child could only nod his head and agree no matter how unwilling he was. "I'll go with you." After saying that, Ghost Child took out 2 pitch-black swords and flew out with Demon King Xiao Yi. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the 2 figures immediately disappeared outside the cave and rushed to the entrance. In the dark cave, only Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were left. Yun Yao had been struggling with all her might. She silently circulated her energy and tried to break free from the imprisonment of the death chain. However, her energy was sealed and she couldn't break free at all. She couldn't speak and could only look at Ji Tianqing. She opened her teary eyes and encouraged and comforted him with her gaze. After a while, the sound of an intense battle came from outside the demon's cave. Boom! Boom! The muffled sounds kept coming and reverberated in the demon's cave. The entire mountain range and the ground shook violently. The ceiling of the cave collapsed and many rocks and soil fell. Ji Tianxing, who was in extreme pain and almost unconscious, immediately opened his eyes when he heard the loud noises coming from outside the demon's cave. No matter how much pain he was enduring, his eyes were still clear. He remained calm and wise. Burial of heaven, lend me a hand. He used his divine thought to call out in his mind. Chapter 1723. Demon King Xiaoyi thought that everything would be fine as long as he imprisoned Ji Tianxing with the chains of death. Ji Tianxing's Dharma power and essence soul had been sealed. He couldn't use any strength at all. He was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Yun Yao's situation was like that. She had no way to escape. But Ji Tianxing was different. He couldn't move or resist, but the burial of heaven could. Demon King Xiaoyi had calculated everything and thought that his plan was perfect. He didn't expect Ji Tianxing to have a divine sword. It was the burial of heaven's sword that had self-awareness and could move on its own. Swoosh! The divine sword appeared out of nowhere, emitting a dazzling cold light. Dozens of black light chains immediately swept toward the divine sword as if they had a mind of their own, trying to suppress it. However, the black light chains couldn't block the sharpness of the burial of heaven's sword. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After a dazzling sword light flashed past, the dozens of black light chains were cut apart. The imprisonment of the chains of death was temporarily broken and lost control. Ji Tianxing, who had been accumulating his power for a long time, made a prompt decision and burst out his power. With a swoosh, he went through the gap and escaped from the death chain. The next moment he staggered and landed in the cave. He covered his chest with a pale face and spat out a mouthful of blood. Countless chains of death flew toward him like poisonous snakes, trying to imprison him again. This time he was prepared. He immediately activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and sent out a dazzling white light with his palm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wherever the sacred white light passed, the chains of death were corroded and purified. They turned into countless pieces and scattered on the ground. Ji Tianxing breathed heavily. Dark red blood flowed out of his mouth and nose again. His heart was severely injured, and his Kenshin bloodline was flowing out. He was very weak and could faint at any time. However, he gritted his teeth and didn't collapse with his strong willpower. He activated the technique and activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. A dense white light gushed out and flowed towards his heart. The holy white light immediately enveloped his chest, protecting his incomplete and bleeding heart, isolating him from the Asura heart-devouring bug. Although the sacred white light could suppress the Shura heart-devouring insect and make it unable to move, the sacred white light could only suppress the Shura heart-devouring insect. However, the holy white light was unable to purify the Shura heart-devouring bug for the time being. Being able to protect his heart from being damaged was already his limit. As for killing and expelling the Asura heart-devouring insects, that was a very troublesome and time-consuming task. He definitely couldn't do it now. Ji Tianxing could only use the white light to protect his heart, temporarily ignoring the Shura heart-devouring worm. He staggered towards Yun Yao and stopped in front of Yun Yao. When Yun Yao saw that he had successfully escaped, she was pleasantly surprised and revealed a look of relief. Ji Tianxing arrived in front of her. He raised his palms and unleashed a holy white light that enveloped her body. Immediately, the death chains wrapped around her body quickly collapsed and were purified by the holy white light. In just 2 short breaths, Yun Yao also safely escaped. She finally regained her ability to speak and move. She couldn't wait to support Ji Tianxing and asked with concern, Tianxing, how do you feel? Can you still hold on?" As she spoke, she also activated the longevity divine power with all her might, releasing a dense dark green light that poured into Ji Tianxing's body. With the majestic longevity divine power, Ji Tianxing quickly recovered his vitality. His essence, energy, and spirit were obviously much better. His face was no longer as pale as paper, and the bowl-sized bloody hole on his chest was also healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, he didn't circulate his energy to heal himself. He quickly waved his hand at Yun Yao and said, "Yao Yao, don't worry about me. I won't die yet. Granny Long has come to save us, and is fighting with 2 demon monarchs. The most important thing now is to escape from this devil's den. Yin Yao quickly nodded and said, "All right. I'll take you away now. When we reach a safe place, I'll heal you." After saying that, she supported Ji Tianxing with both hands and quickly ran out of the cave. Enduring the excruciating pain, Ji Tianxing ran madly through the pitch-black tunnel. He and Yun Yao only used a few dozen breaths to run through the dark tunnel that was 5 miles long. When the two of them reached the entrance of the cave, they finally saw their surroundings clearly. The cave entrance had been destroyed by the aftermath of the battle, and more than half of it had collapsed. More than a dozen huge rocks and dust had blocked more than half of the cave entrance. The cave entrance was located at the foot of the mountain, in a lush forest. It was already evening, and night was about to fall. The dark green forest outside the cave entrance had already been destroyed by the battle. The surrounding dozens of miles were in ruins. Demon Monarch Owl Knight and Granny Long had already moved their battlefield. They were fighting in the sky 100 miles away from the Devil's Den. Muffled explosions could be heard continuously, and dazzling lights shone continuously in the sky. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked up at the sky and saw what was going on. Granny Long was displaying her might. She cast a powerful spell that could destroy heaven and earth, completely suppressing Demon Monarch Owl Knight and forcing him to retreat. However, Demon Monarch Owl Knight had mastered many mysterious techniques and was almost immortal. He could always dodge the fatal attacks. Although he was severely injured, he could still keep Granny Long busy and prevent her from escaping. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were relieved. "Tianxing, Granny Long is enough to deal with 2 demon monarchs. We don't have to worry about her." "Yes, after we leave this place, Granny Long will have nothing to worry about. She might even kill Demon Monarch Owl Knight." As they spoke, the two of them stepped over the ruins and flew into the sky, escaping in another direction. However, at this moment, a huge black shadow descended from the sky and charged toward the two of them with a murderous aura. Swoosh! The black shadow was a ferocious-looking giant that was 30 meters tall. Its entire body was pitch black and covered in dense purple hair. Its body was extremely sturdy and muscular. The huge muscles were like pieces of black rock, containing explosive power. There were a few bloody holes on its body, and there were a few hideous wounds on its chest and back. Purple demonic blood kept oozing out of them. Its scarlet eyes flickered with raging flames of anger, and exuded a terrifying murderous aura. "Ji Tianxing, don't even think about escaping this time." The giant roared loudly. Its fists were like 2 balls of blood-red flames as it charged toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing immediately recognized that the giant was Ghost Child's transformation. Seeing Ghost Child charging toward him with murderous intent, his murderous intent was also ignited. It was as if there was a fire burning in his chest. "Ghost Child, you were lucky enough to escape last time. This time you will definitely die." As he roared, Ji Tianxing formed sword fingers with his hands and performed a mysterious spell. He controlled the Burial of Heaven to attack Ghost Child. Broken Moon Sword. Vast and mighty dermic powers were injected into the Burial of Heaven, causing it to become a huge sword that was hundreds of meters long. It slashed toward Ghost Child. Bam! Chapter 1724. Even someone as powerful as Ghost Child was sent flying by the Burial of Heaven, crashing into the ruins 5 kilometers away. Bam! A huge crater appeared in the ruins as dust and rubble splattered everywhere. Ghost Child struggled a few times before crawling out of the crater and flying back into the sky. His arms hung by his sides as they were bent at odd angles. His fists had gaping wounds that were dripping with blood. Back in the ruins of gods, Ji Tianxing was able to destroy his body and severely injure him. Now, he had yet to recover his Yuan Qi, and his strength was greatly weakened. However, Ji Tianxing was stronger than before. He had long broken through from the 7th Firmament Essence, Soul Realm, to the 9th Firmament Essence, Soul Realm. As a result, Ghost Child was injured after exchanging a single blow with Ji Tianxing. Rage and killing intent warped Ghost Child's face, making him look especially ferocious. "Little bastard, your Kenshin bloodline has already been devoured." Your life is on the line, yet you still dare fight me? He glared coldly at Ji Tianqing as he bellowed angrily. This sentence was meant to probe Ji Tianqing's strength. Ghost Child found it unbelievable. How did Ji Tianqing escape? How did he survive until now despite having his heart devoured by the Shura heart-devouring worm? However, Ji Tianqing did not waste his breath. He held the Burial of Heaven with both hands as he charged at Ghost Child with all his strength. Heaven-splitting strike. Amidst his angry roar, the Burial of Heaven emitted a cold beam that shot into the sky. It condensed into a 1,000-foot-long golden sword. This strike gathered Ji Tianqing's essence, vitality, and spirit, as well as a sliver of sword intent. In just an instant, the gigantic sword cleaved at Ghost Child's head. Ghost Child's expression changed drastically as he did not hesitate to use teleportation, vanishing from the sky with a whoosh. He transformed into a blob of black fiendish gas and dissipated with a bang. The next moment, he appeared in the sky 5 kilometers away. However, even if he teleported to escape, he still could not avoid Ji Tianqing's sword. The giant golden sword locked onto his divine soul aura and also streaked across the sky for 10 miles, striking him with a loud boom. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. Ghost Child's magic shield was shattered by the great sword. Purple blood splattered out of his head as he fell from the sky and crashed into the ruins. Another deep crater was smashed into the ground. Many cracks opened up, and a large amount of soil splashed out. Ghost Child was covered in blood as he lay in the pit, twitching in pain. Half of his body was covered in mud. Half of his huge head had been chopped off by the huge sword. Even his left shoulder and left arm had been chopped off by the huge sword. Brain matter, bones, and internal organs were exposed from the wound, and purple-red blood was still gushing out. Despite suffering such terrible injuries, Ghost Child was still alive. His body could still move. However, the incomparable pain made him so angry that he roared hysterically. "Ah! Ji Tianqing, you little bastard, I will tear you apart." As he roared, Ghost Child took out a pitch-black saber and slashed out a shocking saber light with all his strength. Heavenly Slaughter Ghost Blade. The 100-meter-long black light demonic blade slashed down from the sky towards Ji Tianqing with a destructive power and unparalleled killing intent. Ji Tianqing was fearless. He stared at Ghost Child with a cold expression and raised his left palm. "Ghost Child, your time of death has come." As his cold and emotionless voice sounded, endless golden divine flames spewed out from his left palm. The divine flames immediately condensed into a 10-meter-long golden spear. With an unparalleled destructive power, it stabbed towards Ghost Child. God-slaying spear. Kaboom! The invincible golden divine spear collided with the destructive black saber light. A loud sound that shook the world exploded like thunder. At that moment, the golden divine light illuminated the sky, and the sacred brilliance sprinkled across the sky. The pitch-black black light demonic blade was shattered on the spot, and shattered into black light fragments. Ghost Child's trump card was no match for Ji Tianqing's trump card. After the god-slaying spear destroyed the black light demonic blade, its power did not diminish at all. It instantly pierced Ghost Child's chest. He was pierced through the chest by the god-slaying spear on the spot. The long spear tip was exposed on his back. The incomparably powerful impact slammed into Ghost Child, causing him to fly out involuntarily. Immediately after, the god-slaying spear exploded with a bang. A huge golden mushroom cloud rose in the air. Bang! With this earth-shattering sound, Ghost Child's body was blown to pieces on the spot. Dark purple blood fell from the sky like a rainstorm and sprinkled on the ruins. Ghost Child's body was destroyed by Ji Tianqing again. Moreover, Ghost Child's primordial spirit did not have time to escape. It was blown to pieces by the god-slaying spear and scattered in the sky. With his primordial spirit destroyed, he was of course completely dead. Ji Tianqing did as he said. He really killed Ghost Child. After a long time, the golden mushroom cloud in the sky gradually dissipated. The golden and resplendent sky gradually returned to its gloomy state. Night finally came. The world was covered in darkness. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief and withdrew his left hand. He looked up at the sky and shot out a beam of golden light with his hand. He caught the scattered primordial spirit fragments in his palm. Then, he activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl to purify the demonic chi in the primordial spirit fragments. After the demonic chi was eliminated, he gave the primordial spirit fragments to the burial of heaven. After doing all this, he put away the sword of the burial of heaven and said to Yin Yao beside him, "Let's go." Yin Yao nodded. She looked up at the night sky 100 miles away. Then, she helped him into the sky and flew into the distance. 100 miles away, Demon King Xiaoyi was still fighting with Granny Long. However, he was already at the end of his rope and could not hold on. He was beaten by Granny Long until he was covered in wounds. Demon King Xiaoyi had also seen the battle between Ghost Child and Ji Tianxing. Now, seeing that Ghost Child was killed by Ji Tianxing, he was furious and anxious to the extreme. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao had escaped. His plan had failed at the last step, and had completely failed. At this point, it was meaningless to continue fighting with Granny Long except to die. Therefore, after a few feints, Demon King Xiaoyi did not hesitate to use dozens of years of his lifespan to use the blood escape secret technique. He waved his palms and used the secret technique, forming a mysterious purple seal. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of essence blood, splashing it on the purple seal. Whoosh! Thousands of mysterious seals immediately formed a blood-red door of light under the influence of the essence blood. The door of light stretched across the sky, emitting a powerful and mysterious spatial power. Demon King Xiaoye's vitality was greatly damaged. He staggered into the blood-red door and immediately disappeared. Granny Long was furious. She attacked with her palm, trying to stop Demon King Xiaoyi from escaping. However, the blood-red door of light disappeared instantly. When Granny Long rushed over, Demon King Xiaoyi had successfully escaped and teleported tens of thousands of miles away. Granny Long snorted angrily and turned to leave. Earlier, her divine sense had detected that Yun Yao helped Ji Tianxing escape from the underground demon's den. Moreover, Ji Tianxing had killed Ghost Child. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.